Chapter 1999. When Han Fei saw so many of himself looking at him, he inexplicably thought of the scene when he looked at himself on the Jade Bridge and under the bridge. At that moment, Han Fei was even confused for a moment. Gemini as one. Han Fei no longer used the Gemini divine technique. He suddenly felt that since the navigator let him come in through this entrance, it meant that this was the most suitable place for him. What was the most suitable? Just at that moment, Han Fei felt that this world was very suitable for his great path. However, what was his great path? It was a fundamentally unknown great path that even he hadn't figured out yet. As if thinking of something, Han Fei closed his eyes and meditated. Another day passed. One day later, Han Fei asked the first question, "Is there anyone else in this space besides myself?" Where? This time, the navigator didn't move, which meant that there was no one else here, and the navigator didn't go out of control. Han Fei immediately asked the second question, "In this space, is there any inhuman power watching me?" The nautical panorama did not move, which meant that the mirror dimension was a completely enclosed trap-like space. After asking the second question, Han Fei summoned a jade bridge in front of him with a thought. Of course, in the mirror, there were also countless jade bridges. But Han Fei ignored it and climbed to the top of the bridge in one breath. When Han Fei stepped on the bridge, he could no longer see the outside world. In the other mirrors, Han Fei's figure disappeared, and in the mirror space, there was only a jade stone bridge left. Han Fei stood on the bridge, looking at the figure under the bridge. Han Fei had tried this no less than thousands of times, but he couldn't understand it. He didn't understand what this great path was at all. But this time, Han Fei murmured, "Fake is real, and fake is real. I am real, and so are you. I am fake, and so are you. So, in fact, there is no such thing as the present me or the future me. They are all me." Han Fei was curious. Behind the figure under the bridge was a hazy mist. He had always obtained the power of the Great Way when he reached the foot of the bridge. If he wanted to go forward, he couldn't go any further, so he had to come out. But today, a strange thought crossed his mind. He suddenly turned his head around and leaned on the bridge. He looked down the bridge instead of down the steps. In the past, the entire bridge was shrouded in white mist, and the Jasper Stone Bridge had yet to reveal its true appearance. When the entire Jade Bridge appeared, Han Fei thought that he had seen the whole Jade Bridge, but did he really see it? The existence of the mirror space made Han Fei realize that what he thought was real might not necessarily be real. Maybe his reflection in the mirror also thought that he was real. Just like you in the mirror, it's the opposite. Was it necessary to use a mirror in order to have the opposite idea? Sure enough, when Han Fei looked down the Jasper Stone Bridge, he saw that there was a reflection under the bridge, as if the bridge should be standing in the water. And under the water, there was also a Jasper Stone Bridge, and the bridge opening and the reflection of the bridge looked like a circle. So, Han Fei wondered if he was really alone on the Jasper Stone Bridge, because there was also a reflection of himself under the bridge. Han Fei immediately looked back in the direction he came from. This was something that Han Fei had never thought of before, because he came up from below. However, when he looked in the direction he came from, he found that there was also a reflection of himself standing under the bridge. F***CK. Han Fei felt creeped out. Sure enough, this mirror space gave him an inspiration and made him realize that he was in his own way. He thought he was in his own body, but in fact, perhaps in the eyes of his reflection, he was the vague figure standing here without moving. Gulp! Han Fei swallowed. How? Han Fei's forehead was sweating. He had never seen such a weird great way. It was like the Jasper Stone Bridge was rotating. When he went up the bridge, his reflection was actually going down the bridge. When he went down the bridge, his reflection was actually going up the bridge. If he looked at it the other way around, then when he walked down the Jasper Stone Bridge, was he really going down the stairs? Or was he going up the stairs? If he was going down the stairs, why did he have to bear so much pressure? If he was going up the stairs, was he real or fake? Didn't it mean that he was going up the stairs, but he was actually going down the stairs, and he thought he was going up the stairs, but he was actually going down the stairs. So, Han Fei finally analyzed an extremely terrifying fact. Perhaps he had always been a reflection in the Great Way. This horrified Han Fei. If he had always been a reflection, why did he feel that he was the real person? No, Han Fei shook his head repeatedly. I am me, and I am the real person. There is no such thing as a reflection. Because even if I am a reflection, the other me on the opposite side will also bear the pressure when going up the stairs, so he won't feel that he is a reflection, right? Han Fei took a deep breath. What if he changed his way of thinking? For example, in his yin-yang Great Way, he was actually one yin and one yang, two Taoist bodies. Then when he went down the stairs, in fact, two of them were walking to the same end, just like the combination of yin and yang, the yin-yang Great Way. Of course, his strength will be doubled. So, after he went down the stairs, his strength increased threefold. Was it because of this reason? As Han Fei thought of this, suddenly, Han Fei felt that the bridge began to tremble slightly. Han Fei felt that his yin-yang Great Way was collapsing. What's going on? Han Fei hurriedly went down the stairs. Because he was worried about the yin-yang Great Way, Han Fei didn't notice that when he went down the stairs, he was much more relaxed. When Han Fei went down the stairs, he immediately switched to the yin-yang Great Way among the three Great Ways. However, at this time, the yin-yang Great Way began to collapse in Han Fei's eyes. But this collapse was not a complete collapse. The yin-yang Great Way turned into two mists, one black and one white. One disappeared into the Jasper Stone Bridge, and the other into the projection of the Jasper Stone Bridge. Han Fei was suddenly repelled by the Jasper Stone Bridge. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing in this mirror space. Although Han Fei wanted to continue to see the subsequent changes of the Jasper Stone Bridge, something that made Han Fei extremely excited appeared at this moment. He just ran the Great Way, and at this moment, he felt that his strength had increased threefold. Han Fei was so excited that his breathing became rapid, which made Han Fei couldn't help but grin. His understanding of the Great Way deepened, and when he ran the Great Way, the effect returned to threefold. How could Han Fei not be excited? Originally, although his strength had been skyrocketing, when his strength was 200,000 waves, he could barely erupt with the power of 500,000 waves. When his strength was 250,000 waves, the power of the Great Way was only a little more than 500,000 waves. When his current strength was 290,000 waves and approaching 300,000 waves, the power of the Great Way didn't actually increase. It was still a little more than 500,000 waves and even showed signs of weakening. Han Fei even thought that as he became stronger, the effect of the Great Way would become less and less. Now it seemed that this was not the case. After all, it was just that he didn't understand his own Great Way. Running the Great Way, the power of the Great Way was close to 900,000 waves. How terrifying was that? Han Fei felt that in the chaotic ocean, he was invincible in the sea expansion realm. Who said that strength couldn't be used as a standard to measure combat power? Now his strength was several times that of the top 10 powerhouses in the chaotic ocean. Why couldn't he crush them? Of course, Han Fei was not happy for long. When he wanted to summon the Jasper Stone Bridge again, he found that the Jasper Stone Bridge couldn't be summoned. Although it was shaking, it didn't appear. Han Fei suspected that it might have something to do with the collapse of the Great Way of Yin-Yang. But Han Fei couldn't help wondering whether the Great Way of Yin-Yang had collapsed or integrated into the Jasper Stone Bridge. Unfortunately, these could only be studied later. Now, when Han Fei looked at the countless reflections of himself in this mirror space, an idea suddenly occurred to him. Just like when he was on the Jade Bridge, his reflection had merged with him, and it could be considered as a fusion of the two. So, how could he make the reflections in this mirror come to him? Han Fei activated the Gemini Divine Technique, and his whole body turned into a black and a white mist. The purest original form of the Gemini Divine Technique was the current form of mist. Although the body of black mist couldn't be projected, the body of white mist could. The body of white mist directly stuck to a square mirror, completely sealing all four sides of the mirror. The mirror image extended infinitely, turning the entire mirror image space into a blended white mist. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. He opened his eyes abruptly and found that he was already standing on the altar. Phew! At this time, Han Fei's back was covered with cold sweat, and his forehead was also covered with fine beads of sweat. This test was really too weird. If he wanted to pass it, he had to rely on enlightenment. His enlightenment was actually indirectly guided by the nautical panorama. Otherwise, who the hell could have thought of this? Without the great way of yin yang, the Jasper Stone Bridge, and the Gemini divine technique, how could he get out of that damn place? While Han Fei felt lucky, he was also vigilant. This imperial palace was too difficult to break through. Every corner was dangerous. Fortunately, he was out now. Han Fei immediately looked at the bronze mirror. When Han Fei looked at the bronze mirror, he seemed to feel that he seemed to have missed something. But he didn't care and walked to the center of the altar excitedly. Chapter 2000. When Han Fei approached the bronze mirror, information appeared in his eyes. Name: Infinity Mirror. Replica. Introduction: This mirror is a replica of the yin-yang clear sky mirror. It can reflect the enemy and take them into the infinity mirror to trap the enemy. The way to destroy the infinity mirror is to have the power to surpass the confinement of this mirror, or find a way to break the realm. The infinity mirror is only effective on the same realm and can only trap one person at a time. If you're trapped for a long time, you will be mirrored after 3 years. Quality: low quality divine weapon, spirit attached, none, effect, infinity trapping mirror, recastable, unrefined. Remarks: because it is a replica, its function is very simple. Han Fei couldn't help taking a breath. A low-quality divine weapon? A replica? If this is a replica, how strong is the authentic one? Han Fei's heart trembled. Sure enough, fortune and misfortune go hand in hand. Although the function of this infinity mirror was indeed relatively simple. However, just this single function was terrifying enough to make one's hair stand on end. What would ordinary people do if they were trapped in this mirror? They would probably try to break the realm as soon as possible. Han Fei couldn't help imagining the scene. It was really like every place was reflecting attacks at you. If you dared to use all your strength, you could be beaten to death by yourself. As for finding a way to break the mirror, well, he also had an epiphany before he figured out the way to break the mirror. Even so, Han Fei felt that he was already very smart. If someone else was in here, they might have already killed him. Therefore, no matter whether this infinity mirror was a replica or not, for now, its function was so powerful that it could even trap the time spell, which was already a divine skill. Han Fei was ready. No matter what, this mirror had to recognize him as its master. If he was afraid that his chi and blood were not enough, he had plenty of opportunities to make his chi and blood soar. Therefore, Han Fei pressed the infinity mirror with one hand, and his essence blood flowed out. However, to Han Fei's surprise, the loss of essence blood was not so exaggerated. Only 60% of it was lost, and this low-quality divine weapon was subdued by him without any hindrance. With a thought, Han Fei put away the infinity mirror, and thousands of spiritual fruits appeared around him. They crumbled one after another and were sucked into Han Fei's body to produce pure essence blood. At this point, Han Fei felt that he had passed through the insect-tide forest. The reason why the nautical panorama was pointing here was most likely because it had obtained the most benefits this time, so it chose this path. However, could this path be called a dead end? Han Fei didn't think it was a dead end for sure, but there was a slim chance of survival. Even he had to put in so much effort. How could it be easy for others? Han Fei couldn't imagine that if the other party was trapped in the mirror for 3 years, they might be mirrored and turned into a mirror. Han Fei thought of the mirrors he saw in the Mirror of Infinity and hoped that they were not what he thought. If they were all transformed from human beings, it would be too creepy. After a while, when Han Fei had replenished his chi and blood, he didn't rush to continue exploring the Imperial Palace. First, he had just experienced so much. To be honest, he needed some time to digest it. Second, he still had some questions about the Green Jade Bridge. He wanted to wait 2 days to see if the Green Jade Bridge had stabilized and if he could go in again. And today, he still had one more chance to use the nautical panorama. Han Fei asked in his heart, "Is there any opportunity suitable for me here?" However, the nautical panorama didn't move, and Han Fei didn't care, because he had already gotten a lot of opportunities. More than 1 million kilograms of Earth vein essence and the infinity mirror. Just these two things made this trip to the Imperial Palace worthwhile. 3 days later, the Green Jade Bridge still couldn't be summoned, but Han Fei tried to use the power of yin and yang. This power could be used normally, and there was no problem. In this case, Han Fei didn't wait any longer. After all, the danger here was no longer a danger for him. The originally violent insect tide had now changed back to the appearance of a forest. Those insects disguised themselves as flowers, plants, and trees. Since there was no opportunity for him, Han Fei didn't try again. Was he going to find poison to eat? As for how to leave, this was also simple. The existence of the altar seemed to be for teleportation. After Han Fei took out the infinity mirror on the ground of the altar, lines of an array appeared. Although it was not the teleportation array he often used, Han Fei could still tell the structure of the teleportation array. However, the place that the teleportation array couldn't understand was more like a kind of specific coordinate in place. Therefore, Han Fei guessed that this was a directional teleportation array, and the place it was teleported to should not be simple, because if he wanted to teleport there, he needed to carve more complex array patterns. Since he was already here, he naturally had to enter the teleportation array whether he wanted to or not. Or he could sit cross-legged on the altar for 3 years. Of course, this was impossible. Therefore, Han Fei didn't hesitate to light up this teleportation array with spiritual energy. As soon as the teleportation array lit up, a void entrance under the entire altar was opened. As the dense light rushed out, Han Fei's figure suddenly disappeared without a trace. When Han Fei's surrounding environment just lit up, he only felt that he was surrounded by golden light, and the gorgeous light almost blinded his eyes. When Han Fei took a closer look, he found that this was really a real palace, a hall full of jewels. Inside the hall, the dome was inlaid with gold and jade. All kinds of jade essence treasures, pearls, and demon cores were inlaid with the entire dome of the palace, and the surrounding walls and pillars were also covered with rare, strange iron, mysterious crystal, gold beads, jade, and glittering diamond powder. Han Fei was standing at the entrance of the hall. Behind him was a golden gate, and in front of him was a large ship more than 80 meters long that was made of precious materials. On this entire ship, the lowest level was the demon bead of a venerable realm sea monster. Outside of the ship, there were also statues of golden corpses and their spiritual beasts that were charging at the front lines. However, whether it was a human or a spiritual beast, they were all golden, but they were all just a kind of sculpture, but they were too exquisite. The reason why it was exquisite was that even if you covered a mummy with gold and all kinds of jewelry, you would still feel that the mummy was quite exquisite. In any case, to sum it up in a single sentence, this palace was dazzling with gold and jade, and every single object was dazzling and priceless. Of course, he still couldn't perceive it. But Han Fei heard someone shout, "Who is it?" Han Fei frowned. Someone? It seemed that he had met someone. But anyway, Han Fei wasn't afraid that they were emperors. If they were his opponents, he would kill them together. However, when Han Fei passed this big ship, he saw from a distance that there were 3 people here. One of them was Qiu Yueming of the Glass Heaven. Although he didn't fight with her before, he had met her a few times. When Qiu Yueming saw Han Fei, she was also shocked. Han Fei was also here. Han Fei looked at the other 2. They actually knew each other. They were introduced to him by Bing Xue Chuling when he went to the land of the King Grave. A woman holding a flute was Liang Yin, the palace master of the Fanning Heaven. And the thin but spirited man was Su Yin, the palace master of the refining God Heaven. These 3 people obviously didn't show any hostility at the moment, which showed that they were quite friendly and had no intention of fighting. However, when Liang Yin and Su Yin saw Han Fei, they were shocked and immediately became vigilant. Now that this ferocious man was here, would he attack them? Although they hadn't experienced Han Fei's strength, it didn't mean they didn't know. This was a guy who had snatched the Yin-Yang heaven and the Shuimu heaven from Beiluochen. This was a terrifying person who dared to rob the Tai-Ching palace and successfully forced He Daoyuan back. This was also a peerless genius who could dominate the Pioneer Sea realm in just a few decades. However, in their hearts, Han Fei was ruthless and straightforward. He was the type who always went straight to the point. Look at the Avalon of 5 elements, the Medicine King heaven and the Dream Weaver heaven. Which one of them hadn't been messed up by Han Fei? After Han Fei saw them, he looked at a throne not far behind them. On that throne, a jade-like skeleton was lying. The skeleton was adorned with gold, silver, rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. There was a 6-colored wreath on its head and a gorgeous robe that seemed to be supported by some kind of golden thread. It looked like an emperor. In front of the throne was a bronze platform. From left to right, there were some rare treasures on it. There were sea-quelling bizarre treasures, exotic gems, supreme-grade spirit fruits, and strange talismans. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Is this the so-called Dizun?" Han Fei took a step forward and approached the 3 people. Su Yin and Liang Yin were in a defensive stance. Xiao Yueming said, "Don't come close." Han Fei tilted his head and nodded at Xiao Yueming. "Did you guys come here directly?" Then, Han Fei looked at Su Yin and Liang Yin and smiled. "Don't worry. As long as you're not an enemy of the Yin-Yang heaven, I won't do anything. I'm not as bloodthirsty as the rumors say." Su Yin cupped his hands. "Greetings, master of Yin-Yang heaven." Liang Yin said, "Greetings, Taoist Han Fei. I've already been to 3 dangerous places before coming here. This is the 4th. Su Yin said, "This is the 2nd place I've been to since coming here." Xiao Yueming said, "I've also been to 3 dangerous places before coming here." Later, you'll hear a voice asking for a rare treasure. As long as the treasure meets the person's requirements, he'll let you go. Chapter 2001. Han Fei's lips twitched. Looking at the skeleton that was half lying on the splendid throne, he was lost for words. "You're giving it to her?" Everybody nodded. Han Fei asked, "What if I don't give it to her?" Liang Yin said, "So far, it seems that we can only leave this place if we give her what she wants." As soon as Liang Yin finished speaking, a voice rang out from a void. It was a woman's voice. The voice said, "Temple of Greed, stop. You can leave after offering your wealth and treasures." Han Fei looked around and finally confirmed that the source of the sound was the skeleton. Su Yin said, "This sound will appear once every 2 hours." Han Fei's first thought was to ask, "You 3 kings are here. Why didn't you work together to take care of this guy?" Xiao Yueming and the others looked at Han Fei. Was this what bandits did? They wanted to kill the guardians of the palace as soon as they arrived. Were they born to be rebellious? But Su Yin said, "I came here first and searched every corner, but I didn't find a way out." Xiao Yueming said, "After I arrived, I proposed to attack the skeleton on the throne. However, we tried, but we were blocked by an invisible barrier and given a warning." Han Fei asked, "A warning?" Xiao Yueming said, "The first attack is just a verbal warning. The second attack will double the price." Han Fei asked, "What about the 3rd time?" Liang Yin said, "She will offer all her treasures, including those that have been recognized as her master." Han Fei was instantly amused. "Why? You'll give her what she wants? Well, you won't give her anything, will you?" Han Fei didn't think that he would give her anything regardless of whether they did or not. This was an imperial palace, but so what? Unless this person was the real imperial emperor, it was impossible for her to ask for anything from him. Han Fei firmly believed that this person couldn't be an imperial emperor. Judging from her extremely luxurious clothes, she was clearly a female skeleton who loved vanity and corruption to the extreme. Look at the decoration style of the entire hall. Even the F*King floor tiles were made of gold and jade. To be honest, Han Fei was tempted as soon as he entered this place, especially the ship behind him. He really wanted to stuff it into the Origin Sea and make it his spoils of war. Xiao Yueming nodded. "I did, but she didn't want it." Xiao Yueming explained, "This skeleton seems to be able to judge the grade of the offering. Normal offerings won't be accepted at all and will be repelled. Han Fei was amused. She spoiled him so much. The three kings thought that Han Fei would attack and destroy this place. As a result, Han Fei flipped his hand and the nautical panorama appeared in his hand. The moment the navigator appeared, the three kings all looked at the navigator in Han Fei's hand and couldn't help but speculate. Han Fei asked, "Where is the emperor of the imperial palace?" Han Fei asked this because he was afraid that the skeleton was the only way to find the emperor. If the navigator pointed at the skeleton, should he sacrifice it or not? Sure enough, the nautical panorama did not point. Han Fei smiled disdainfully and immediately said, "Where are the heaven-opening state experts in this palace, including those who have died?" Crack, 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 the navigator began to spin. The 5 wheels only turned slightly a few times and then pointed at the skeleton wearing all kinds of gorgeous jewelry. Han Fei couldn't help but grin. It's just a heaven-opening state expert. If you were alive, you'd be terrifying. But you've been dead for so long. Do you still think you're important? At this time, Qiu Wenming and the other two looked at the navigator in Han Fei's hand in surprise and then at Han Fei in shock. Su Yin said, "Has this thing really been made?" Han Fei didn't care about Su Yin and the other two's surprise. He took out the multidimensional navigator in front of them to show them. With their strength, so what if they saw it? Besides, neither the refining God Heaven nor the Sanskrit Heaven was his enemy. Showing the navigator meant that he wanted them to surrender to him. Since Han Fei was sure that this skeleton was just a heaven-opening state expert, he had no scruples. According to common sense, Han Fei felt that he had surpassed the limit of the sea-opening state. If he didn't use a secret method and just relied on his own strength, Han Fei felt that it was almost impossible for his pure strength to reach 500,000. Even if it was 300,000 yuan, it was already very rare. Even when Han Fei fought Han Xian, he didn't feel that kind of suppression. Although the sea-opening state didn't depend on strength itself, his Tao was not weak either. Moreover, his great Tao had improved further. If he were to unleash his full strength, perhaps he could display a terrifying strength of over 1 million waves. Perhaps just one of his fists would be enough to crush a sea expansion expert. Han Fei leaped with golden light, as if he was going to ignore the so-called barrier and go directly to the front of the skeleton. But then the terrifying impact directly made the whole palace tremble for a while. Han Fei was speechless. What could block his golden light leap now? Unfortunately, this barrier had been set up for too long, and he couldn't go around it in the river of time. Han Fei's body was only a little numb, but he soon recovered. But in the palace, there was an echo. Warning! The power of heaven must not be violated. If you do it again, the wealth and treasures offered will be doubled. Han Fei grinned. Doubled? Ha! Han Fei took out the embroidery needle and activated his Tao. In an instant, he burst out with all his strength and smashed it at the nearest 2 pillars inlaid with gems and various demon essence crystal jades in this palace. And the target of the embroidery needle was the skeleton of the rich emperor wearing gold and silver. Even if this imperial palace was extremely hard, it was not so hard that even Han Fei couldn't shake it. Otherwise, didn't it mean that even an ordinary bead here had reached the point where even a heaven-opening state expert couldn't break it? With the level of this large palace, how could it be for an imperial emperor to live in? It should be for a divine spirit to live in. Sure enough, these 2 pillars suddenly exploded, and a large number of rare treasures scattered all over the ground. And to Han Fei's shock, these damn pillars were also full of all kinds of dazzling and gaudy treasures. Han Fei even saw a lot of mysterious yellow stones. In addition to the mysterious yellow stones, Han Fei felt that there were a lot of gems and crystals here, which seemed to be able to be used to refine rare treasures. Apart from other things, the resources produced by these 2 pillars were as much as 100,000 scattered gems of various colors, which could be used as 100,000 keys to the imperial palace. Gudu, Qiu Wenming, and the other 2 were dumbfounded. Lunatic, this is absolutely a lunatic. Can you be so unscrupulous just because that skeleton is a heaven-opening state expert? What do you think a heaven-opening state expert is? At this time, Han Fei's rod didn't stop. It swept around and finally smashed at the place where the skeleton was. Clang, rumble, the terrifying power made Qiu Yueming, Su Lian, and Liang Yin slide on the ground and be pushed to the corner by the rolling airwaves. The three of them even had to wear battle suits, hold shields, and circulate the Great Tao in order to be able to safely block the remaining power of the attack. Crack, at this moment, in the eyes of Qiu Yueming and the other two, the invisible barrier was full of cracks. It was like a white crack had appeared out of thin air. This meant that Han Fei's rod had almost smashed the invisible seal of the corpse. Besides, just from the remaining power, they didn't know how powerful Han Fei was now. Even though Qiu Yueming had seen the battle between Han Fei and Feng Xinlan, she didn't expect that Han Fei could grow to such a level in just a few decades. Before, she didn't believe the rumor that Han Fei could compete with a heaven-opening state expert. Now she had no reason not to believe it. Seeing that the barrier wasn't broken, Han Fei flipped his hand and put away the various gemstones and mysterious yellow stones that were scattered all over the ground. He sneered, "It has always been me robbing others. No one has ever robbed me before. What can you do to me?" As expected, this time, the rich skeleton didn't say anything. It seemed that warning was meaningless. The golden skeleton on the throne, who was half lying on the throne, slowly stood up. The precious jewelry on her body made a jingling sound. Following that, the king saw that the skeleton's eyes were burning with blue soul flames. A voice sounded in the palace. "Those who take my treasures die." The golden skeleton slowly stood up. In front of and behind her throne, among the jewelry on the ground, some demon essence crystal flew up and attached to her skeleton. Han Fei couldn't have felt better. The 10 skeleton fingers that looked like withered branches were suddenly covered with more than 20 rings of colorful gems. From her wrist to her arm, bracelets made of all kinds of materials were jingling, such as mysterious sky jade, blue light chalcedony, red fire glazed crystal, and so on. There were more than 100 of them. On this person's neck, necklaces of all kinds of colors were hanging. A crown appeared on his head, and the crown was inlaid with an unknown gem the size of a goose egg. Anyway, he was rich. Chapter 2002. Did it come back to life? Han Fei didn't panic. Holding the embroidery needle, he secretly mobilized the chaotic energy. It seemed that he would have to fight. Compared with the insect-tide forest and the mirror space, Han Fei preferred this kind of test that could be passed only by fighting. After all, he had a chance to win the battle, but the insect-tide forest and the mirror space, to put it bluntly, if he didn't understand it, he wouldn't be able to get out. If he didn't understand it within 3 years, he wouldn't be able to get out. How could it be like now, where a huge amount of resources were waiting to enter his pocket? As long as he killed this tycoon skeleton, he would be able to do so. Qiu Yueming and the other two finally saw Han Fei's behavior clearly. He was simply a lunatic who started fighting without any hesitation. Now, the skeleton had come back to life and filled its flesh with the treasures and mystic crystals. Han Fei sneered, "That skeleton, I advise you to let me go, and I can leave you some wealth. Otherwise, don't blame me for taking your entire palace for myself." Chilla, the skeleton bounced up from the throne. When it passed through the invisible barrier, it underwent a strange change. It turned into a beautiful woman with a head of red hair, a beautiful face, and a voluptuous body. She was dressed in luxurious clothes. However, no matter how she changed, she couldn't change her rich temperament. The woman floated to Han Fei in a flash and pressed her palm at him. Han Fei felt that his body was slightly stiff, and his skin seemed to be covered with some kind of golden jade substance. "Ha ha! You're the first one to steal someone's treasure." Qiu Yueming and the other two were dumbfounded. They leaned against the wall, wondering why it was so weird. They had never been to this palace before. This was their first time here, and it was weirder than any palace they had ever seen. In particular, when they saw with their own eyes the skeleton turned into a beauty and attacked Han Fei, they were even more horrified. It looked as if Han Fei had been frozen. Humph! The third eye between Han Fei's eyebrows suddenly opened, and his heart beat crazily like thunder. At the last moment, Han Fei launched a counterattack, and the sacrificing punch burst out. The terrifying power suddenly broke through a million waves. Under such a violent force, Su Yin and the other two had to use a small part of their strength to resist the impact. Kaka. Under the impact of such a violent force, the jeweled ship, which was inlaid with gold and jade, began to slide, directly crashing into a certain wall of the palace. Rumble, bang, Han Fei was pushed back more than 1,000 meters by the slap and hit a pillar. The huge inertia directly shattered the pearl, but Han Fei completely withstood such a blow. On the other hand, the skeleton beauty was not unscathed under Han Fei's punch. She leaned back, and her body was like a feather, lightly sitting on the throne again. Ha ha! Very strong, man. I know what is the most precious treasure in your body. Naturally, it is that invincible heart in your heart. Han Fei grinned. You want my heart? Old hag, you're already a skeleton. Do you think you're worthy of my heart? Buzz, a ripple spread out from the throne, and the beautiful woman's expression turned cold. Who are you calling an old hag? Han Fei smiled. I'm calling you an old hag. You've already become a skeleton, but you're still pretending to be young. Even if you take all the treasures in the world, you can't restore your appearance. You're already dead. Ah, with a scream, the beautiful woman shouted, I'm going to swallow your luck, destroy your Tao, and make you a collection among these treasures. The beautiful woman waved her hand, and on the bronze platform that was originally used for sacrifice, many treasures burst out and rushed at Han Fei. Dharma form, heaven and earth. In front of Han Fei, a Dharma form giant condensed, and Han Fei suddenly appeared on the giant's head, shouting, sacrificing, fist mark. Boom, boom, boom. Han Fei ignited the chaotic energy and fought with the Dharma form. He burst out with all his strength, and even if he punched out with his terrifying power, it would be resisted by the void. The whole palace began to shake, and the ultra-quality divine weapons and sea-quelling bizarre treasures were all blown away under Han Fei's crazy blow. Since he came to the imperial palace, Han Fei didn't intend to hold back his strength. Unlike others, he wasn't going to stop after exploring a small part of the palace. Danger was often accompanied by opportunities. The stronger the enemy, the greater the opportunity. If he looted all the treasures in this palace, his origin sea would be full of rare treasures and Xidagarba ores. Just for this, Han Fei wouldn't give up. Han Fei had even prepared a 5-fold Tao pattern pill. He didn't believe that a skeleton of an emperor could exert a lot of power. When those rare treasures and divine weapons were blown away, one of the arms of the Dharma form body was also completely destroyed. But as Han Fei tilted his head, the giant arm was regenerated. Han Fei roared, Since you're already dead, I'll send you to the Western Paradise. Han Fei's Dharma form attacked. With a strike of 2 fingers, the Tao integration sword almost shattered the void here. But Han Fei didn't expect the space here to be so solid. Anyway, when the Tao integration sword burst out, even the skeleton had to put on a serious face. Ha ha ha, what a powerful man. I like him, but I have a lot of treasures here. As a matter of fact, the beautiful woman stretched out her hand, and a golden battle shield appeared in front of her. Clink, hum, BM, BM, BM in the palace. A large number of rare treasures shattered and fell. The brilliance of the explosion enveloped the entire palace. Puff, 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 Qiu Yueming, Su Yin, and Liang Yin vomited a mouthful of blood under the sudden impact. They were shocked. Is this Han Fei's power? What kind of power is this? He can already fight against a heaven-opening state, Overlord. Qiu Yueming was fine. When he knew Han Fei's identity, he knew that they were allies. As for Su Yin and Liang Yin, because they were both masters of the immortal palaces in the outer regions, they had been ruled by the Grand Pure Wuji for so many years. Although they didn't completely rely on the Grand Pure Wuji, they would still ask for help when they encountered difficulties. Now that Yin Yang Heaven had returned, the old grudge between Yin Yang Heaven and the Grand Pure Wuji was inevitable. There would be a battle between Yin Yang Heaven and the Grand Pure Wuji sooner or later. As far as they knew, the 4 palaces of the Sword God, The nine-palace heaven, the yin-yang heaven, and the waterwood heaven were on the side of yin-yang heaven. Considering the sword god and Han Fei's current strength, it seemed that he was really qualified to compete with the Grand Pure Wuji. Su Yin and Liang Yin couldn't help but let their imaginations run wild. If Han Fei could return safely, the structure of the 36 Xian heavens of the human race would probably change. Apart from everything else, Han Fei's personality alone was enough to start a war with the emperor. They had never seen such a reckless person who would start a war with an emperor just because of a disagreement. The Tao Convergence sword burst out, and Han Fei sneered, because the yin-yang reincarnation knife also burst out. Han Fei didn't know if it was his illusion, but the beautiful woman seemed to have aged a lot. She saw a steady stream of new treasures attached to her body, and her appearance returned to her original appearance. Han Fei was intrigued. Did these treasures give her power? With a flash of golden light, Han Fei was already standing on the big ship full of treasures, and the Origin Sea forcibly collected the treasure ship. The beautiful woman was anxious. In the blink of an eye, she was in front of Han Fei. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the time in front of him slowed down. When the beautiful woman pressed her palm down, a golden light flashed, and Han Fei disappeared with the big ship. Once again, he felt a powerful force comparable to the Tao Convergence sword burst out. That invisible barrier. A gap was cut open by Han Fei's sword. As long as there was a gap, Han Fei could enter. Anyway, when the beautiful woman looked back, Han Fei was already sitting on her throne. Around him, there were a lot of treasures, including the throne. They were forcibly grabbed by Han Fei. No one is allowed to deprive the master of his wealth. 10,000 treasures return, heavenly treasure cage. As soon as Han Fei collected these resources, he suddenly found that countless golden chains appeared in the void around him, directly locking him in. As for the beautiful woman, she tossed out a milky white pearl. That pearl seemed to be able to arouse the greed of others. Even Han Fei was a little stunned when he saw it. However, this was a battle. While Han Fei felt that the pearl was a rare treasure, he also felt that he was facing great danger. If he was shot, the consequences would be unpredictable. Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. At this time, he naturally had no chance to break the cage. He immediately shouted, and the Gemini Divine technique suddenly broke out. With a flash of golden light, the black mist body directly stepped into the long river of time and escaped from the time node that had just been opened. And Han Fei didn't care about the other half of the white mist body. He just wanted to kill the beautiful woman. At this moment, when the white mist body was blown up by a blow, Han Fei suddenly appeared behind the beautiful woman. Han Fei launched the immortal killing chi and launched his strongest blow. Bam! 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 Puff! 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 Su Yin and the other two vomited blood. The space was too narrow, and they were almost fighting against someone at the heaven-opening realm. They never thought that they would encounter a battle of the heaven-opening realm in such a reasonable way. The three of them only felt that if they didn't die this time, they would already be thankful. Yes, now Han Fei's strength was completely recognized by them as the heaven-opening realm. Chapter 2003. At this moment, Han Fei didn't dare to be careless in front of someone at the heaven-opening stage, even though the opponent was just a corpse. At the last moment, he sacrificed his body of white mist in exchange for a chance to escape from time and launched a wave of divine, killing intent at the corpse. The moment the divine killing intent touched the beautiful woman, it exploded twice in an instant. This was the crafty time technique that Han Fei had learned. Rumble, Liang Yin, and the others were forced to huddle together. The three of them worked together to resist the remaining power of the divine killing intent. They were all speechless. Could Han Fei be stronger? In the explosion, the whole palace was shaking and countless treasures and mystic crystals fell. Although the beautiful woman was indeed powerful, she was hit by the divine killing intent twice in a row. Besides, Han Fei's strength was completely different from before he entered the palace, so the terrifying power directly shattered the beautiful woman. Countless treasures fell off, and her body returned to the state of a skeleton. At this moment, Han Fei felt that the strength of the corpse was declining rapidly. Looking at the corpse, it still wanted to grab the scattered treasures. How could Han Fei let her do that? The corpse had treasures, which meant it had power. In an instant, Han Fei split into hundreds of clones and quickly swept the scattered treasures. Han Fei shouted, "You three, help me collect resources. Don't let any treasures fall into the hands of this corpse." Qiu Wenming and the other two chose to take action without hesitation. It seemed that Han Fei had won. Besides, Han Fei's super explosive power wasn't something they could resist at all. So, at this moment, they could do nothing but obey Han Fei's orders. Now that the four of them worked together, the speed of collecting resources was very fast. Anyway, Han Fei had already started fighting and even won. There was no reason for them not to help. Besides, Han Fei obviously didn't want to kill them. He even showed them such a magical thing as the nautical panorama. His meaning was very clear. He was warning them that if they could get out of here alive, they'd better stand on the Yin-Yang Heaven's side, because the Yin-Yang Heaven controlled the way to leave the chaotic vast sea. At this moment, the scattered resources in the field were gathered almost instantly. The skeleton did not obtain many treasures, so it was unable to recover. But just when Han Fei was about to chase after it, the skeleton suddenly turned back to look at Han Fei and let out a shrill roar from its throat. "You stole my treasure. I curse you. I curse all the treasures in this world. I curse you. I curse you. I curse you. I curse all the treasures." The skeleton spewed out a huge amount of black mist, which turned into strange runes that filled the sky and drilled into these treasures. Han Fei retreated quickly and immediately shouted, "Apocalypse Divine Technique. Buzz." When the divine radiance descended and swept through the area, a large number of incantations were purified. Su Yin and Liang Yin looked at each other. Although they already knew that Han Fei could perform the apocalyptic divine technique, it was the first time they saw it at such a close distance. Liang Yin thought to herself, it was indeed the heaven awakening divine art. The power of this curse was purified just like that. Su Yin's eyes twitched. It seemed that if he could return this time, he would have to think about who was worth following. People like Grand Pure Wuji were actually just overlords who ruled a region, but they had a strong foundation. But people like Han Fei were so talented that no one could see through his potential at all. No one knew how strong he could become. Crack, crack, crack. After the huge amount of incantations broke out, the skeleton collapsed into a pile of broken bones, no longer having that queen-like demeanor from before. Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief and circulated the spiritual energy in his body. After a short recovery, he was fine. The collapse of the body of white mist only required 500 years of vitality. After he became a king, the recovery requirement of the Gemini divine technique became higher, so he needed 500 years of vitality. If it were in the past, in fact, it would only take 200 years of vitality to recover. Of course, for this trip to the Imperial Palace, Han Fei had prepared 20,000 years of vitality. What was a mere 500 years? When Han Fei recovered, he activated his spiritual energy. Like a big shovel, the infinity water directly began to dig the ground. The floor tiles on the ground, the wall tiles, the treasures on the dome, Han Fei didn't let go of any place where there were treasures. After this round of cleaning, Han Fei made a lot of money. Han Fei had obtained more than 10,000 mystic yellow stones, countless demonic essence of various colors, and a large number of mystic crystals and strange stones. In terms of value, many of them could be used to refine rare treasures in the Nirvana Sea. But as minerals, they were all extremely precious and could greatly enrich the Origin Sea. There were no mines in the Origin Sea. Besides, in addition to these, the old turtle reminded him, collect more of this ring. Han Fei was slightly taken aback and looked at an ordinary-looking ring, which was one of the many rings worn by the skeleton just now. This ring was white and seemed to be made of some kind of shell. When Han Fei sensed it, he found that the shell space was more than 800 kilometers wide. Yes, Han Fei was right. This thing was more than a little stronger than the sun-moon shell. It was definitely a top-level spatial treasure. Han Fei was surprised. "What kind of ring is this?" The old turtle said, "If I'm not mistaken, it should be made of star shells, and it's the best among them." Star shells? Han Fei found a lot of resources in this ring, and this discovery made him even more tempted. It turned out that there were as many as 30 million ultra-quality spiritual stones, several sea-quelling bizarre treasures, tens of millions of kilograms of spiritual spring, and nearly 1 million black Yellowstones. There were also all kinds of treasures and materials. Suddenly, Han Fei found that there was a bottle of strange liquid sealed in many layers hidden here. Han Fei's heart did a flip, and a long-lost message appeared in his mind. Thousands of races in the sea. 296202223 owner. 932564 nearby bloodlines. Green water Kirin. Time dragon carp. Golden crow divine blood. Twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish. Emperor sparrow. Hexagon starfish recommended bloodline. Green water Kirin. When Han Fei saw this green water spirit awakening bloodline, he took a deep breath. So far, he hadn't encountered any bloodline that he could continue to absorb. This green water Kirin came at the right time. Although he had many bloodlines around him, none of them were useful. Han Fei was in urgent need of a bloodline. Han Fei broke the seal without hesitation and activated the bloodline swallowing technique. As soon as it was activated, Han Fei found that. This time, the devouring time reached 112 years. Han Fei couldn't help but be curious. "Old Yuan, have you heard of the green water Kirin?" "Green water Kirin?" The old turtle thought for a while. "Of course I have, but the green water Kirin is an auspicious beast, good at healing techniques, and has a very long lifespan. But it can't be called a divine beast because it can't pass the hurdle of a divine beast. It can't be regarded as a prehistoric beast because it's not good at fighting. At most, it can be regarded as an Archean mutant." "Oh, I see." Han Fei had a rough idea. If it was really at the level of a divine beast, he might not be able to devour the bloodline of this green water Kirin. If it was an Archean mutant, Han Fei felt that the bloodline devouring this time could only bring him about 100,000 points of growth. However, none of this mattered. If he could become an emperor, the level of his bloodline would be further improved, and maybe his absorption speed would be faster at that time. And the essence blood of time dragon carp and hexagon starfish might also be able to be devoured. After sorting out the resources, Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim that he had gained a lot on this trip. The problem of bloodline growth had been temporarily solved. With the rare treasures and resources collected by this skeleton, his origin sea would become stronger. Now, he just needed to continue to expand and allocate resources. Then Han Fei couldn't help but look at Xiao Yueming and the other two. With a glance from Han Fei, the three of them immediately knew what he meant and threw all the resources they just grabbed to Han Fei. Han Fei smiled. "I want to ask, how did the three of you come here one after another? If 3 kings came at once, didn't you meet the kings of other clans?" Liang Yin said, "I met a mermaid in the Pioneer Sea realm, but we didn't fight because our purpose was not here." Su Yin said, "I didn't meet other kings, but the place where the refining god heaven came from was not far from the Brahma in heaven. We probably happened to enter the imperial palace in a similar place." Xiao Yueming said, "I fought a king of the undersea human clan, and when I entered this palace, I happened to meet a few half-king human clan powerhouses." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "You met a half-king human clan powerhouse?" Xiao Yueming nodded. "Yes, those people were not weak. The last place I was at was a vast forest, and there were many demon plants there. Because the place is big, it's normal that there are many exits." Han Fei nodded slightly. It seemed to be a coincidence. But Han Fei was still a bit confused as to why 4 human kings came to this place. After all, it wasn't a human race that came. But Han Fei didn't think too much about it. He took out the navigator again and pointed the imperial palace to where he was. But this place had been dug up, and nothing was left except a wasteland. Therefore, Han Fei guessed that the navigator was pointing to the void nodes. He reached out, tore open the void, and reached in. Then, he dug out a small token with the word greed on it, and the reverse side was carved with an array. Han Fei activated the array with his spiritual energy. Immediately, complicated array patterns appeared on the ground. Han Fei could tell that this was a random teleportation array, but the random nodes seemed to have been carved long ago. Han Fei said casually, "You owe me a favor, don't you think?" Chapter 2004. Han Fei wasn't interested in Qiu Yueming and the others. With his current strength, he was more powerful than Bei Luochen. Apart from finding opportunities, Han Fei also guessed that the test of the Void Temple would be held here. Being able to enter the Void Temple and being a nominal disciple were two different things. King Wu couldn't enter the Void Temple. So what if he suppressed the chaotic ocean all by himself? The only thing he could suppress was the chaotic ocean. But the purpose of Han Fei's trip was not to suppress the chaotic Azure Sea. He just wanted to enter the Void Temple. Once he entered the Void Temple, Bei Luochen and he Dao Yuan would be a piece of cake. But Han Fei found that he had already gained a lot before he even found the Void Temple. After seeing Qiu Yueming and the others off, Han Fei didn't leave immediately. He couldn't be too hasty. He was wondering why there was such a temple of greed in the Imperial Palace. According to the strength of the skeleton, Han Fei estimated that even if Qiu Yueming and the others joined hands, they wouldn't be a match for it. Unless there were 7 or 8 kings here, and they were all at the top of the Pioneer Sea list in the Chaotic Ocean. 2 or 3 of them could even have the power of the heaven-opening realm. Only by suppressing the skeleton could they really deal with the Temple of Greed. But Han Fei estimated that even so, at least one of them would die. Otherwise, they would have to contribute their wealth and precious resources. From a huge amount of resources here, it could be concluded that the skeleton must have fooled a lot of people. Now, he met 2 people in a mirror. Han Fei didn't know what the relationship between the insect men and the greed skeleton was, but he wasn't sure about the mirror. However, it was hard to say for the mirror. It might just be a treasure in the Arch Palace that just happened to be in that place. But according to Qiu Yueming and the others, they all encountered several dangerous places. If everyone encountered several dangerous places, then how many dangerous places were there in the Imperial Palace? These were only places that the kings had been to. There must be many places that the venerables had gone to. There were actually a lot of opportunities in so many dangerous places. These fortuitous encounters were the main reason why so many people in the chaotic Azure Sea obtained great fortuitous encounters and even became monarchs. But with too many fortuitous encounters, it was easy for people to get lost. The Arch Palace was the residence of the Arch-Emperor. Did one have to go through these small opportunities to obtain the truly great fortuitous encounters? Han Fei had the navigator in his hand. He felt that he was blessed by nature. No one could find the real opportunities faster than him. Therefore, Han Fei estimated that if he wanted to, he should be able to get more than others. However, just like the Temple of Greed, which was highly dangerous, it was also a place of great rewards. At the end of the day, with his strength, he would still be able to explore these places. Why wouldn't he give up such an opportunity? So, Han Fei sorted out his thoughts and immediately thought of something. 1 year, 3 years. I'll spend at most 1 year exploring the places of great opportunities. No matter what happens next, we have to find a Void Temple in the next 2 years. After making such a judgment, Han Fei resumed his visualization for a day. On this day, one was to make sure that he was in peak condition. The first was to wait for the navigator to recover its 3 usages. The second was to consume the resources in the Origin Sea with his mind. It was imperative to explore the Origin Sea. He had gained a lot from this trip and had some wealth, so he took out 500 million ultra-quality spiritual stones to explore the Origin Sea. Of course, this amount of resources was far from enough, but he was still looking for opportunities. The next day, Han Fei saw that no one came, so he activated the greed token with spiritual energy and an array appeared. But Han Fei didn't directly enter the array. Instead, he took out the navigator and said, "Find a suitable place for me to go." Han Fei paid attention to the suitable place and didn't overly pursue the opportunity itself. It was mainly because he had confirmed yesterday that this was a random teleportation or a one-to-many fixed-point teleportation. Since it was such a teleportation, the place he went was related to the time he entered. Although a place like the Temple of Greed was good, the uncertainty was too high. If Han Fei hadn't gained a deeper understanding of the great Tao in a mirror image world, his strength would have tripled again. Then, the result of facing the greed skeleton was that he probably couldn't defeat it at all. Or, even if he wanted to defeat it, he would have to use the time, spell many times, and use all his trump cards, such as the Eyes of Invincibility, the Dragon Transformation Technique, the 5th grade Tao Pattern Pill, and the Emperor's Sparrow. Therefore, this time he came to the Temple of Greed, he just happened to win. If it was a random teleportation, it was hard to say whether he could win or not. When the navigator stopped, Han Fei disappeared in the teleportation array with a swish. Gulyalu. Han Fei's eyes lit up. As soon as he appeared, he knew that he was in the sea. The water in the sea was extremely sharp, and he felt as if he were in a sea of knives. Before he had time to observe the surroundings, the aftermath of the battle swept at him. Someone's already here? Han Fei's first thought was, of course, one of the Chiu Yueming trio. One of them might have come here and encountered an enemy. And the enemy of human beings could only be the 100 demons, the seabed human clan, or the mermaid royal family. Han Fei looked around, only to find that it was just an ordinary seabed without any special features. He leaped in the direction of the battle with a golden flash. A moment later, when Han Fei arrived, he saw that this place was frozen for thousands of kilometers and the airwaves were as sharp as knives. The Snow Maiden and a gargantuan toad beast were defending themselves against the violent waves of the sea. Seeing Han Fei, the Snow Lady was also very surprised. She didn't expect to meet Han Fei so soon. The Snow Lady said, "The seawater here is abnormal. It's as powerful as the most powerful treasure of the sea. We have to break this abnormal seawater, or we won't be able to pass." The toad glanced at Han Fei warily and smashed a wave of swords in front of it with its big claws. It said in a booming voice, "We should work together to break this fierce water." Just now, a despicable seabed human rushed through this place while we were fighting. I hope you won't do that, or... Faced with the toad's threat, Han Fei didn't care at all. He appeared in the violent waves of swords with a swish. Clang, 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 clank, clank, clank. Han Fei resisted the crazy attacks with his physique. When he saw the fine white marks on his body, he couldn't help but be shocked. Infinity water? Han Fei's face changed slightly. He had always felt that the infinity water had an extraordinary origin. It was a sea-quelling bizarre treasure that could grow. He didn't expect it to come from this place. The Toad and the Snow Lady were shocked to see Han Fei standing in such a crazy wave of swords and knives unscathed. The Snow Lady wondered if Han Fei was going to force his way through. The Toad was shocked. This person's physique is so strong. It actually stood in the middle of the terrifying waves, wave after wave. Just now, when trying to forcefully break through, it was forcibly cut open all over its body, leaving wounds all over its body. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, as expected of the Imperial Palace. It's simply a huge treasure vault. He turned his hand, and the infinity water appeared in his hand. The infinity water flickered into a beam of light in the water, just like when he first saw it. In the instant that the infinity water transformed into a pillar of light, the pressure on the Snow Lady disappeared almost instantaneously. Han Fei saw that the waves that looked like cold currents were surging towards him crazily. Han Fei couldn't help but frown. If it weren't for the fact that the infinity water was crazily absorbing the essence of water. Han Fei even suspected that he had been targeted. Seeing that Han Fei was being targeted, the giant toad immediately jumped into the depths of this sea. Han Fei said leisurely, "Didn't you say you wanted to ally with me just now? Why are you running now?" The giant toad didn't even look back. "I'll ally with you when I have a chance. Obviously, the water is targeting you." "Sorry." At this moment, layers of ice appeared in front of Han Fei, and the Snow Lady tried to attack him. But Han Fei shook his head slightly. "Go after the toad. If there's an opportunity, it should fall into the hands of the human race. This place can't stop me. The Snow Lady asked, "Are you really okay?" Han Fei nodded. "I'm fine." The Snow Lady glanced at the endless waves rolling over. To be honest, she really couldn't stop it. So the Snow Lady gritted her teeth and chased after the toad. Han Fei directly activated the power of the Tao, tripled his combat power, and put on a battle robe. He didn't know whether the Infinity Water's abnormal behavior was good or bad, but the Infinity Water was now his weapon and belonged to him. It wouldn't collapse, so it shouldn't be destroyed by the waves. When the sea current rushed at Han Fei, the 100 layers of arrays he had set up in front of him were all shattered. Following that, a massive amount of blade energy slashed at his body. Han Fei thought that his physique was extremely strong, but if the same place was cut too many times, blood would ooze out. Fortunately, most of the terrifying waves were drawn into the beam of light transformed by the Infinity Water. After half an hour, during which Han Fei cast the apocalyptic divine technique on himself, he finally made it through. When the beam of light dissipated and Han Fei saw the Infinity Water again, a string of information popped up. Name: Infinity Water can grow. Introduction: in the past, an emperor comprehended the emperor's path before he died. Fearing that his knife skills would be lost, he shattered the Tao and condensed the knife water, which was called the Infinity Water. The Infinity Water implied the infinite knife intent. The Infinity Water, the strongest form, could transform into Tao, enter the soul, and cut the Tao. Quality, ultra-quality, sea-quelling, bizarre, treasure, spirit attached, none, effect, illusionary. Cutting Tao, not recastable, unrefined. Remark: it has barely reached the extreme state of a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Affected by the host, it can't go further. Chapter 2005. The Infinity Water absorbed the essence of water, but what the Snow Maidens and the others encountered was not the essence of water, but more like other types of Infinity Water. After the two fused, they became the Infinity Water, which was a supreme-grade, sea-quelling bizarre treasure. In terms of how powerful a supreme-grade, sea-quelling bizarre treasure was, it seemed that only Lei Qing could forge it in the entire chaotic ocean. Even if Lei Qing had forged one for others, there might not be more than 10 in the entire chaotic azure sea, or even 5. This time, Han Fei seemed to have picked up a bargain. He just didn't know if there was such Infinity Water essence ahead. If there was, the more the better. Maybe the Infinity Water could be promoted to the level of a divine weapon. Han Fei grinned, and with a flash of golden light, he chased in the direction where the Snow Girls and the Toad Behemoth went. In just 100 minutes, Han Fei saw a deep blue undersea cave. Han Fei pointed with the nautical panorama and went in without hesitation. As soon as he entered the black hole, Han Fei felt that the world was upside down. He turned around and appeared on a small island. Of course, like other places, he couldn't perceive anything on this small island. But the scene of devastation, the strong smell of blood, and the still violent impact of power told Han Fei that there seemed to be a fierce battle here. Han Fei stepped into the air and crossed to the center of the island. Even if a pioneer sea-state powerhouse couldn't perceive anything, he could tell the source of the battle by judging the outpouring of power. After only a dozen minutes, Han Fei flew for about 50,000 kilometers and finally came to a place with mineral veins and mountains. Before Han Fei arrived, he saw a huge figure flying over from a distance. It was so huge that it blotted out the sky and the sun. While flying, it was bleeding. Wasn't this the big toad that had just arrived first? Puff! The toad flew back first, and the Snow Girls also flew over, stained with blood and covered with cracks. But upon a closer look, the broken things were all ice, not the Snow Girl's body. BM, the several hundred li long toad, was like a meteor. It smashed into the ground and rolled several hundred times, stirring up a vast amount of energy and causing dust to fly everywhere. When Han Fei discovered the toad naturally discovered Han Fei too. It thought to itself, how could such a terrifying torrent of ice blades with the power of the sea and endless blades be so easily cracked by a human? The toad shouted, "Dao friend, it's dangerous ahead. We have to leave quickly." Although it was reminding Han Fei knew what it was trying to do. It was obviously trying to get close to him to ease the embarrassment of being the first to escape. Han Fei said leisurely, "Who's your friend? It's better if you don't call me that." After that, Han Fei raised one hand, and a pillar of light fell. The healing divine light hit the Snow Lady. Only then did the latter heave a sigh of relief and say, "It was originally a place with a water curtain. However, the fortuitous opportunity here had already been taken. Furthermore, a terrifying being has appeared here, and its strength is most likely at the heaven-opening stage." Han Fei didn't know what to say. "I've just played Sky Splitter, and now I'm playing Sky Splitter again. Are you kidding me? Is the heaven-opening stage so worthless now?" Han Fei's face changed. "Do you think I can beat someone at the heaven-opening stage?" A skeleton at the heaven-opening stage and a living creature at the heaven-opening stage were two completely different things. He killed a skeleton at the heaven-opening stage by trickery. Facing a living one, unless his strength was 50% higher, he would still have the confidence to kill it. At this moment, in the sky, another enormous shadow of a dragon flew across. Han Fei took a closer look, only to find that it was a big dragon with a single horn on its head. A small part of its body had been cut off, and blood was spurting out. Han Fei was speechless. "Wait, how many sea opening stage cultivators are there here?" The Snow Lady said, "7, 2 behemoths, me, a mermaid royal, a sea human, and 100 demons. There's also a king of the sea human named Lingbo. For some reason, he has already gone crazy. Our opponent is him. I'm afraid he has already opened the sky." Han Fei was puzzled. "If we can't beat 6 people, why should we fight him?" The Snow Lady said, "The exit is guarded by Lingbo. We have no choice but to fight." The Toad Behemoth said, "Fellow Taoist, we should work together to open a way out." Han Fei squinted at it. "Didn't you tell me to run just now?" The Toad Behemoth said, "I said fellow Taoist. Don't go inside. That sea human is really weird. He has an invincible arm. The 6 of us are no match for him." Han Fei raised his eyebrows. So exaggerated? Although Han Fei really wanted to kill this toad, there were still many unknown factors in this imperial palace. Although this toad was a king, its strength was probably about the same as the Snow Lady's. Even if it went all out, it would still be no match for him. Therefore, Han Fei glanced at the toad and the Snow Lady. "Since you want to leave, don't be afraid to fight. Let's go and have a look." "Me too." As Han Fei spoke, he saw a cold-faced woman in black scale armor flying over. Her chi and blood were seriously scattered, and there was a single horn on her head. Was this the one-horned dragon that had been swept away just now? This was also a behemoth. Han Fei couldn't help but glance at the toad. "Can't you turn into a human? You're so big. Are you going to be beaten like a sandbag?" The Snow Lady said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "The so-called allies are only temporary at most. Except for the Behemoth clan, everyone else here is an enemy. You better think about whether you want to cooperate or kill them later." Han Fei nodded slightly. Of course, he wouldn't really cooperate with these guys who were originally enemies. However, some places had to be guarded. If they were all dead, he could only rely on himself in the end. Although these people might not be very strong when they operated their respective Daos and cooperated with each other, even Han Fei couldn't kill them in an instant. Swish, swish, Han Fei flew out. Only a few seconds later, he saw a burly guy with gills on his neck, webbed palms, and scales. His right arm was shining with golden light, and his whole arm seemed to be made of pure gold. Han Fei was speechless when he saw this. "Shoot, it's a Qilin arm." One of the kings of the Seabed Human clan and the 100 Demons clan was shocked when he saw Han Fei. Why is this demon here? Even the Merman Royal clan powerhouse's face turned cold at this moment. Han Fei's ferocity was now well known in the chaotic Azure Sea. But fortunately, Han Fei and the princess were in love, so he wouldn't make things difficult for them. Besides, Han Fei might not be able to solve the problem in front of him, so they might have to cooperate to fight later. Although the Merman royal clan and the 100 Demons clan joined forces to resist the enemy, everyone had their own plans. But as soon as Han Fei arrived, everyone had their own thoughts. The guy named Ling Bo punched out with the intent of extermination, sending the three of them flying at the same time. Under that terrifying power, the shield of the 100 Demons clan's big turtle had been shattered, and the three ice crystal spiritual flakes of the Merman royal clan had also been shattered. Now that Han Fei was here, everyone had hope. In fact, Han Fei's current strength was only 300,000 waves. Although he was already very strong, he had only become a king recently, and he was still young. Han Fei knew that 300,000 waves was still too weak for a heaven-opening state cultivator. So he activated his Tao without hesitation. If this person was easy to deal with, he would kill the other kings later. Therefore, Han Fei activated his Tao, and the terrifying power of nearly 1,000,000 waves collided with Ling Bo's punch. Because he knew he was strong, Han Fei wasn't afraid of killing him with one punch. The latter's eyes were crazy and bloodthirsty. As soon as he saw Han Fei coming, he naturally fought back. Boom! When the fists collided, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The Snow Maidens were going to help, but they were directly sent flying for more than 100 kilometers by the aftershock. The terrifying energy ripples directly crushed all the vegetation on this island into nothingness. Bam! A figure like a meteor rolled hundreds of times on the ground and was also smashed hundreds of kilometers away. When the smoke and dust cleared, he took a closer look. It was none other than Han Fei. Clatter! Han Fei retreated more than 1,000 meters, stretched his arms, and his face suddenly became solemn. At this moment, he was no longer shocked by the power displayed by the other party. But when that person punched him, he felt that his essence blood seemed to be sucked out. Suddenly, Han Fei didn't feel well, and a strange desire emerged in his heart. Get it, get it. Han Fei's eyes were a little red, and the old turtle shouted, calm down, calm down. Han Fei suddenly came back to himself and couldn't help but be shocked. Did he almost lose control just now? The old tortoise said. This emperor sensed an extremely powerful evil intent appearing in your divine soul. What happened? Han Fei said, there's something wrong with that hand. The old turtle said, needless to say, I also know that there's something wrong with that hand. It's clearly not that Ling Bo's hand, but a new one. Otherwise, I don't believe that in this chaotic ocean, there could be a pioneer sea-state cultivator who can suppress you in strength. It's exactly because it's not his hand that his hand can withstand my power, but Ling Bo can't. That punch almost crushed his flesh and blood. It's impossible for him to do that on his own. The toad behemoth and the one-horned female flood dragon were also horrified at this moment. What kind of divine power did Han Fei show? This guy actually punched the monster head-on. At this moment, everyone naturally put their hopes on Han Fei. Han Fei grinned and said, everyone listen up. You want me to help you stop this person? Do you really think you don't need to pay anything? Chapter 2006. Hearing Han Fei's words, everyone's faces changed. Only then did they remember that Han Fei was a lunatic who had robbed the Avalon of 5 elements, the Medicine King Heaven, the Dream-Weaving Heaven, and the Sky Purity Palace. Would such a guy really treat them as allies? The Toad Beast said, fellow Taoist, what do you mean by this? This toad has always treated you with sincerity. The one-horned female flood dragon pulled the toad and patted its head. Don't be naughty. We don't know if this guy is good or bad. But from the looks of it, he doesn't look like a good guy. We should be prepared to fight the enemy with the Royal Mermaid family and the 100 Demons. The toad asked, then aren't we fighting 2 heavenly opening realm cultivators? How can we fight them? The one-horned female flood dragon. The giant beasts didn't know much about the chaotic Azure Sea. They really didn't know much about Han Fei. The power that Han Fei displayed was too strong. The toad that could talk freely just now didn't dare to speak anymore. The Royal Mermaid said, Han Fei, even if you need resources, shouldn't you wait until we subdue this guy first? Han Fei grinned. Go ahead and treat him. You guys treat him as much as you want. I don't care about this guy anymore. The Royal Mermaid's face changed slightly. Why is Han Fei so rude? After all, Aren't you the son-in-law of the royal mermaid family? The 100 demons and the humans at the bottom of the sea were already approaching each other. When everyone was considering whether to give Han Fei resources, they saw Ling Bo's eyes turn red. He stared at Han Fei excitedly, as if he had found his prey. Huh? Han Fei was speechless. If his guess was right, this guy's insides must have been damaged beyond recognition. He'd lost at least 30% of his combat power. Didn't he know that he wouldn't last long if he fought him head-on? As his name suggested, Ling Bo twisted his body and dashed towards Han Fei. His golden arm was suffused with a bloody color, and he charged straight at Han Fei. Han Fei was speechless. There are so many people around. Why do you have to attack me? Perhaps that arm gave that person a strength that surpassed the sea opening realm, but that person's blood-red palm directly locked onto him. The moment Ling Bo found Han Fei, everyone except the Snow Lady rushed to the back of the Ling Bo guard at full speed. There was a dilapidated, profound crystal building there. Although it had long since collapsed, the light it emitted indicated that it was the exit of this place. They didn't get anything from this trip, so they couldn't possibly hand over their lives, right? However, how could Han Fei let them get what they wanted? A blue light flashed in front of Han Fei, and he disappeared into time. The next moment, he appeared in front of the teleportation array. Han Fei glanced at the teleportation array, and a look of enlightenment appeared in his eyes. Then he sneered. What? Do you really think I'm here to help you fight? At this moment, Ling Bo followed Han Fei closely, causing the people who were about to reach Han Fei to retreat again. Only Han Fei held the embroidery needle in his hand. In the face of such a violent battle, he naturally chose to solve it with violence. Looking at the blood-colored palm, Han Fei took a deep breath and launched a heaven-knocking gate attack. Boom poo! However, the blood-colored palm grabbed the power of Han Fei's heaven-knocking gate with one slap. However, the crafty time technique broke out at the same time, and half of Ling Bo's body exploded into pieces, and the upper body was almost completely annihilated. Han Fei took the crafty time technique by surprise and directly shattered Ling Bo's body. But he also suffered the power of the Qilin's palm. Fortunately, the infinity water had just been upgraded, and Han Fei used it as a shield. With a bang, the infinity water exploded, and the golden arm attacked again, ignoring Ling Bo's injury. Han Fei punched with all his strength, and the two fists collided. Once again, Han Fei felt the incomparable desire in his heart. He longed to get that arm. But Han Fei's reason told him that this was just the temptation of that arm. Han Fei raised his hand, and the heavenly awakening divine technique descended. This time, he used it on himself. What Han Fei needed was the purification power of the heavenly awakening divine technique. When the divine brilliance shrouded him, Han Fei's eyes and ears became clear, and he resisted the temptation. But as soon as Han Fei came back to his senses, he saw that Ling Bo's body suddenly shrank, and the whole ground collapsed, turning into a drop of blood, which was sucked in by the golden arm. Then the golden arm flew towards Han Fei, having just been purified by the heavenly awakening divine technique. Han Fei immediately felt the temptation again. Fuse. Little Black and Little White fused with Han Fei, and Han Fei had to use the ruthless state of the yin-yang divine eyes to resist the temptation of this golden arm. Perhaps this golden arm was a very powerful treasure. After wearing it, even an ordinary king would be as strong as Sky Splitter. If he used it, even Bei Luochen and He Dao Yuan might not be able to defeat him. However, this thing was too strange. Besides, Han Fei still felt that his arm was very strong. He was the strongest man in the chaotic ocean body tempering school. After suppressing his doubts, Han Fei retreated quickly and shouted, "Within 3 seconds, each of you hand over 500 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. Otherwise, don't blame me for giving this arm to you." The faces of the kings changed drastically. This was the exploration of the imperial palace. Han Fei understood the mentality of the kings. Once they encountered danger, it would be dangerous if they didn't have resources with them. Therefore, when the kings explored the imperial palace, They would definitely bring a lot of resources with them. Han Fei said again, "Hurry up, where are the ultra-quality spiritual stones or resources of equivalent value? Otherwise, none of you will be able to leave." When the golden arm grabbed at him, Han Fei's figure flashed, and he escaped from the pursuit of this arm again. And his first target was the human king from the bottom of the sea who was still alive. When the latter saw Han Fei coming, his face changed on the spot. No matter what, his life was more important. At this critical moment, no one would think that resources were more important than his life. The man's face changed drastically, and he threw 5 sun moon shells at Han Fei. At the moment when the sun moon shells were thrown out, the man retreated quickly. Now the weird golden arm was chasing after Han Fei. If he dared to stop, he would be courting death. Sure enough, the golden arm had already caught up with him, but the only thing to be thankful for was that its speed was not very fast. Although it could still affect Han Fei and try to invade his soul just now that Han Fei had fused with Little Black and Little White, his temperament was much colder. Even if this golden arm could catch up with Han Fei's speed and continue to affect him, Han Fei still had one last trick, which was the 7th grade soul calming pill. Swish! Han Fei flashed again and chased after the king of the 100 Demon Clan. The latter was livid. Like the human king from the bottom of the sea, he threw the sun moon shells and immediately ran away. At the same time, the toad and the one-horned female flood dragon threw the sun moon shells to Han Fei almost at the same time. The toad said, "Fellow Taoist, this is all I have." Han Fei sneered, "I don't believe you." Han Fei reached out, and with a golden flash, he landed next to the Snow Lady. To his surprise, the golden arm didn't chase after him. The others were also horrified because they saw that the king of the mermaid royal family was trembling and his eyes were glowing red. In front of him was a golden arm. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The toad said, "Run. That arm has found a newcomer. This guy is stronger than Lingbo." The right arm of the king of the mermaid royal family was melting, and the golden arm was slowly fusing with it. The Snow Lady shouted, "Let's go. We can't stay here for long. The opportunities here have obviously been taken by someone else. It's not a good time to fight with this arm." Han Fei frowned. It was not that he didn't want to leave, but he didn't think there were any big opportunities in such a dangerous place. So, Han Fei took out the nautical panorama and ran while turning. It was the first time that the Snow Lady had seen the nautical panorama. She didn't expect that Han Fei would take it out at this time. The nautical panorama turned and pointed at the golden arm. Han Fei's heart sank. Han Fei's heart sank. Although this thing was terrifying, it should be a treasure. However, for now, Han Fei had already sensed the horror of this arm after the initial confrontation. It was trying to distort his nature, invade his soul, absorb his essence blood, and replace his arm. Besides, the power that the arm could unleash was far beyond his. If it weren't for the fact that the person using it wasn't strong enough, he would have been seriously injured just now. Therefore, Han Fei decided not to take this opportunity, because he wasn't sure if he could take it. Some things could be taken and attacked, such as the skeleton of greed, because its limit was there. But some things couldn't be guessed at all. He couldn't even touch its limit. Why should he take it? Han Fei pulled the Snow Lady to the teleportation array and activated it immediately. At this moment, the mermaid royal family didn't chase after them. Instead, she put on a creepy smile and squeezed out a sentence from her throat. "You can't run away." In an instant, the toad, the one-horned female flood dragon, and the kings of the undersea humans and the 100 demons were all horrified. Even though they knew that it was equally dangerous to go through the teleportation array with Han Fei, it was better than staying here. And Han Fei didn't deliberately make them stay. If they could meet again later, it wouldn't be too late to make a move then. He didn't want to waste time and give the golden arm a chance. Chapter 2007. When Han Fei's eyes lit up again, what he saw was still ruins. There was a broken bronze gate that was 1,000 meters high. Han Fei was quite shocked when he saw the gate. Was it the Gate of the Void Temple? But Han Fei was relieved when he saw that there was no T-shaped carving on the gate. However, Han Fei looked around and found that it was a huge ruin. Many kings were sitting cross-legged in the ruins. When Han Fei took a closer look, he found that there were about 18 kings from the human clan, the 100 Demons clan, the mermaids' royal family, the undersea humans, the behemoths, and the martial emperor's city. The kings on the human clan side all changed their expressions when Han Fei showed up. The kings of the other clans were also shocked. Han Fei was the last person they wanted to meet. Ever since the news of Han Fei escaping from Bei Luochun, sneak attacking the Grand Purity Palace, and slaughtering 4 kings in a row, and escaping with ease had spread, no one wanted to provoke such a lunatic. Han Fei and the Snow Lady looked at the human clan's side immediately after they saw the situation. There was another acquaintance there. Who else could it be but Huang Jie? Behind them, the toad and the one-horned female flood dragon rushed to the behemoths as soon as they came out. The toad roared, "Eight Eyes, Squid Girl, I'm here. I've finally found you." The kings of the undersea humans and the 100 demons quickly left Han Fei without a second's delay. Han Fei heard that the toad spoke to the other 2 behemoths telepathically. "Don't fight that human. That guy has the power to create the sky. He's extremely terrifying." The undersea humans and the 100 demons also told their clans about Han Fei's strength. Han Fei had planned to find a new place to kill the kings of the undersea humans and the 100 demons. But he didn't expect to see so many kings here. Were they here for a meeting? Next to Han Fei, the Snow Girl's expression changed, and he said, "Is it here?" Han Fei was confused. "Where's this place?" The Snow Lady said, "This is the limit that people could reach. I heard that no one has ever broken through it. The 36 profound sky monarchs had obtained their great Daos here. Once upon a time, there was a divine tree here. It was filled with great Daos, divine weapons, and unique treasures." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Wasn't that tree dug up?" The Snow Girl also glanced at Han Fei. "Yes, but you should know who dug it out." Han Fei thought to himself, "Of course I know, but I don't know if you're talking about the demon purification pot." But Han Fei didn't think that the demon purification pot was a calabash and what they dug up was a tree. But if it wasn't the demon purification pot, where was the tree that was dug away? The 2 of them communicated for a while before landing on the ground. Han Fei glanced around. There were 4 other human kings besides Huang Jie. Qiu Yiming, Liang Yin, and Su Yin were among them. But in addition to them, there was another guy that Han Fei had a little impression of. Who else could it be but Hong Yu of the Mad Corpse Heaven? Speaking of which, Hong Yu felt that his luck was extremely bad. Why did he have to run into Han Fei every time? This was already the 4th time. Why don't you find a few King powerful allies for me? Look at the people around me. Huang Jie, a poisonous old man who didn't like anyone. Liang Yin and Fan Yin Tian were famous for being nice. They couldn't afford to offend Han Fei. Qiu Yiming was originally from the Glass Heaven and was Han Fei's ally. Su Yin, after all, he was also from the 13 Outer Heavens. The others wouldn't offend Han Fei, and he was certainly not stupid. So, he was the only one here who had stood on the Grand Pure Wuji's side. So, when Han Fei looked at him meaningfully, Han Yu said via voice transmission, "I surrender. From now on, the Mad Corpse Heaven will firmly stand on the Yin Yang Heaven side. When I go back, I will cut off all the connections between the Mad Corpse Heaven and the Grand Pure Wuji." Han Fei was also stunned. Is this guy so straightforward? He's surrendering to me directly? Han Fei couldn't help but grin. "How can I believe you? You were one of the people who attacked the Yin Yang Heaven, weren't you?" Hong Yu was sweating all over, and he said, "I didn't attack him directly at that time. The Grand Pure Wuji forced me to attack him, but I couldn't beat Han Guanshu at that time. I was defeated in the first confrontation and didn't participate in the later battle. Really, I can make a vow." Han Fei curled his lips. "I never believe in vows, but I believe in resources. If you take out 1 billion resources now and give me 5 billion when we go back, I will believe you and forget about what happened in the past." Hong Yu was speechless. He said, "How can I bring so many resources in this imperial palace? I only brought some life-saving resources, which add up to no more than 500 million. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "Oh, then give them to me. At least in the imperial palace, I won't touch you, but after we go out, You have to make up for these resources. Of course, if you die here, I won't ask for them from you. Han Yu really wanted to slap himself at this moment. Han Fei rose so fast that he must have consumed a lot of resources. Opening the Origin Sea alone would require a lot of resources. Why did he blurt out 500 million just now? He should have said 2 or 300 million. Unfortunately, Han had already said it. If he didn't want to die, he had to pay. Although all the forces were here, if Han Fei really wanted to attack, who dared to stop him? This guy was famous for his craziness. If he really fought, he didn't know how long he could last. Therefore, as soon as Han Fei stood still, Han Yu immediately stood up and handed Han Fei 6 sun moon shells with a smile. Qiu Yueming and the others. The Snow Girls and Huang Jie were intrigued. It seemed that Han Yu had surrendered. According to Han Fei's personality, he would definitely attack Han Yu. However, Han Yu gave him resources as soon as he came, which meant that he had lowered his head or even chosen to surrender. With a faint smile on his face, Han Fei casually took the sun moon shells and looked at the kings of the other forces. Among them, Han Fei saw an acquaintance from the Martial Emperor's city. If you remember correctly, it was Bai Yu from the Super Resource Store. On the Mermaid royal family's side, Han Fei also saw an acquaintance. He seemed to be the commander of the guards outside the Mermaid royal city, Li Dian. As for the others, Han Fei didn't know any of them. The Snow Girl said, I don't know about the giant beasts, but the old turtle from the 100 Demons is named Pang Jia. It said that he has a trace of the bloodline of the ancient dragon turtle. He's very strong. His defense and combat ability are amazing. The old man from the undersea humans is named Zhou Bai. He's among the top 10 of the pioneer sea state in the chaotic vast ocean. Don't underestimate him. Han Fei looked at Qiu Yueming and the others and said, there are 6 humans for beasts, 2 from the Martial Emperor City, 3 from the 100 Demons, 3 from the undersea humans, and 4 from the Mermaid royal family. There are 22 people in total. Why are they all here? Huang Jie said slowly, wait a moment. Everyone who has been here knows how dangerous this place is. Han Fei asked, isn't the bronze gate broken? Huang Jie grinned and said, it is broken, but it doesn't mean there are no dangers inside. When the sun, moon, and stars appear behind the gate, and the bright starlight shines, you can enter. Otherwise, you'll run into horrible things if you enter now. Han Fei looked at where they came from and asked casually, how long do we have to wait? Huang Jie said, 3 to 5 days at least, and 2 to 3 months at most. The first time we came to this place, it was Han Guanshu who led us to this place. After it's opened, it will be the time when the kings die. I didn't expect that we would come here so soon. Huang Jie's words made Han Fei's heart skip a beat. The so-called death of the kings referred to the fights for treasures. However, it was different this time. Han Fei said, we might not be able to wait until then. Huang Jie and the others couldn't help but look at Han Fei. What did he mean? What did he mean by we might not be able to wait until then? Han Fei didn't plan to attack. After all, there were too many kings here. Also, it was said that there were a few strong ones. Even though Han Fei was confident that he could suppress them, they must have trump cards. It was meaningless to kill them before they even saw any treasures. One day later, a teleportation array appeared in the sky, and a lobsterman and a sharkman appeared. 2 more kings of the 100 Demons appeared. Another day, 1 from the Martial Emperor's city and 1 from the Behemoth clan came. At this moment, the number of kings here had increased to 25. On the 3rd day, Han Fei was sitting cross-legged, waiting for the sun, moon, and stars that Huang Jie mentioned. Suddenly, the teleportation array flickered, and 2 human kings appeared. When Huang Jie and the others saw them, they had a bad feeling. Han Fei knew one of them. It was Ji Xian of the Grand Purity Palace. It was said that he was among the top 10 in the chaotic ocean. It was Ji Xian and Yi Qinglong of the mermaids who went to the place where the kings died. And Yi Qinglong was said to be second in the pioneer sea realm of the mermaids. From this, one could guess Ji Xian's strength. As for the other person, the Snow Lady said, Zhou Fu of the Wuji heaven is second only to Yun Tianhe. Oh no! When they saw these 2, Hong Yu, Liang Yin, and the others knew that things were bad. Even the kings of the other clans were watching the show. Not letting them down, Han Fei suddenly stood up and grinned. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you insist on coming in. Han Fei used the Dao and the Dao as one sword. Without hesitation, he attacked Zhou Fu, who was relatively closer. Zhou Fu and Ji Xian had just arrived. By the time they saw the situation, Han Fei had already charged over. Han Fei's full strength was terrifying. Both Zhou Fu and Ji Xian were horrified. The power of this sword made the two feel as if they were facing death. Seeing that it was Han Fei, Ji Xian shouted, "Brother Zhou, use all your strength. Either he dies or we die. If you have a trump card, use it now." The Three-Tailed Divine Scissors. Chapter 2008. A jade shield appeared in front of Zhou Fu. 13 light swords shot out of his hand and formed a circle, trying to shatter the Dao Convergent Sword. Bam! Crack! 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 The 13 small swords of flowing light shattered one after another, and the jade shield was destroyed soon after. A pair of golden scissors slashed down, and Zhou Fu unleashed an earth-shattering attack with his saber. Only then did they manage to block Han Fei's Dao Convergent Sword. Rumble! A terrifying power swept across the place. The bronze gate was shaken by the power of the two sides. Fuse! 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 Zhou Fu and Ji Xian fused with their spiritual beasts without hesitation. This time, Han Fei also fused with his spiritual beast. He wanted to fight a quick and decisive battle to slay the king. If it was someone else, Han Fei would have let it go. But this was the grand pure Wuji. He couldn't let it go so easily. Knock on the heavenly gate. After the Dao Convergent Sword, Han Fei's second attack arrived in an instant. Zhou Fu had time to react. A green jade token appeared in front of him and turned into 1,000. Talisman Dao, Heavenly Cycle Jade Scroll. The dazzling light collided with the jade token array. In an instant, the Heavenly Cycle Jade Scroll was full of cracks. Zhou Fu was shocked. What kind of terrifying power was Han Fei? It could even shatter his power of the Dao in one attack. Ji Xian didn't dare to hesitate. If Zhou Fu was in trouble, it meant that he was out. On the other hand, although there were many human kings on Han Fei's side, including Hong Yu, would they help them? The answer was obviously not. Ji Xian roared, "Grand Pure 1-meter sword. Slash the body, slash the soul, slash the fate." On the side, the toad from the giant beast lineage said in astonishment, "Are these people so crazy? Just how big of an enmity do they have to have such a grand formation right from the start?" Li Jian and the other kings were shocked that the mermaid royal family didn't participate in the battle. Was Han Fei already so strong? They vaguely remembered that Han Fei had gone to the mermaid royal city a year ago. At that time, only one incarnation had gone. He hadn't become a king yet. No one had thought that his real body was very strong, but now it seemed that he was comparable to Yi Qinglong and Long Yujun. Meanwhile, the kings of the 100 demon race and the underwater human race looked at each other and said, "From now on, our two races will work together. There are too many experts here, especially Han Fei. His strength is inestimable." Han Fei didn't even need to do anything. The advanced infinity water directly rolled at the clear 1-meter sword. After wrapping the sword, Han Fei grinned. "Explode. Not good. Quick, block it." This madman. Rumble, the terrifying impact shattered everything in the area, and the bronze gate fell to the ground with a creak. And the 1-foot sword of the Grand Pure One was directly annihilated and shattered by Han Fei. This was not enough. Ji Xian and Zhou Fu were at the center of the explosion. Their internal organs had been blasted to smithereens, and they were covered in blood. Even their battle robes were in tatters. Amidst the billowing smoke and the terrifying explosion, a golden light flashed out. Following that, the kings felt two extremely high-quality powers intertwining with each other. Ji Xian was shocked. He recognized this move. It was the move that Han Fei had used to kill Bei Xianbing when he pretended to be Wang Yijian. It was the combination of celestial spiritual energy and ferocious energy. It was a power that could kill a king with one strike. Pu Ji Xian shattered half of his blood essence, burned his blood, and rushed toward the bronze gate. Bastard! Zhou Fu yelled. Was Ji Xian leaving him alone to deal with Han Fei? This guy had gone crazy. God knew how he had unleashed the power of the heaven-opening state. Immediately, the jade slip in Zhou Fu's hand shattered, and Bei Luochen appeared. This was naturally a projection of Bei Luochen, and it also contained the power of Bei Luochen's attack. The moment Bei Luochen appeared, he shouted coldly, Han Fei, this attack was prepared for you. A black leech appeared behind Bei Luochen. Han Fei felt a large amount of negative energy there. Apart from that, it seemed to be the full power of the heaven-opening state. Invincible eye kill. Han Fei opened his forehead, and the divine baleful energy charged at Bei Luochen. Seeing this, the kings of the major forces all shouted, be careful. Don't be affected by the power of the heaven-opening state. Bang, bang, poo, two ripples vibrated in the void. With one strike, the incomparably tough void of the Arch Palace was blasted into a large void storm. Ji Xian had already rushed into the Bronze Gate. Han Fei didn't have time to care about him, but Zhou Fu was forced to stay by Han Fei. Even though he had summoned Bei Luochen's power, he was still vomiting blood. Hong Yu's heart was trembling. As expected, Han Fei was already strong enough to fight against a heaven-opening state. Zhou Fu was finished, definitely finished. Even one of Bei Luochen's doppelgangers was killed by Han Fei. How could Zhou Fu block it? In fact, Qiu Yueming, Xuan Nu, Huang Jie, and the others were all dumbfounded. Opening the sea and shaking the sky, was it so easy? Han Fei opened his mouth and inhaled. His body was full of energy. Although his battle suit was torn, his fist still landed on Zhou Fu. Boom! The king's body exploded. In Han Fei's hand, the nautical panorama pointed. Between his fingers, he grabbed a wisp of soul and crushed it. All the kings heard was an unwilling cry. Zhou Fu, the third strongest of the Wuji heaven, had died just like that. Li Jian of the Merfolk royalty was also shocked. Originally, no one in the Merfolk royalty thought the princess and Han Fei would marry. But now, it seemed that Han Fei's power was beyond everyone's imagination. How long had it been since the imperial palace opened? If Han Fei could continue to grow, or if he obtained a great opportunity here, it might be possible for him to become a sovereign. But just as Han Fei was about to win, Xuan Nu suddenly shouted, "Oh no! Hand!" Han Fei was stunned. He had just killed Zhou Fu and was about to use the Gemini divine technique to absorb the chaotic energy in Zhou Fu's origin sea. But when he looked back, he saw a king of the Merfolk royalty opening a crack in the void. One of his hands was a golden arm. That person was staring at Han Fei with burning eyes. F*CK, caught up with me? It seemed that Han Fei's battle had caused too much noise and caused countless cracks in the void, so the golden arm controlled that person and forced it to break through the void. Seeing this, Li Jian couldn't help but shout, "Qin Shuang, what's wrong?" Han Fei shouted at Huang Jie and the others, "Don't just stand there. Come in." Then, Han Fei glanced at Li Jian. After all, he was from Xia Xiaochan's family, and there was no conflict between them, so he should remind him. So Han Fei said telepathically, "Stop shouting. Don't call him over. He's already controlled by that hand. Run." Li Dian's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Han Fei in astonishment. Han Fei's reminder had changed his opinion of Han Fei. But now is not the time to size Han Fei up. Li Jian suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. Even he had to run when Han Fei released such a terrifying power just now. What the hell was this golden arm? As soon as Han Fei ran, Huang Jie, the snow girl, and Qiu Yueming followed him. They were all his allies. Han Fei's decision to run was not unreasonable, and with the snow girl's reminder, they didn't dare to slack off. Hong Yu was among them, thinking that he might be able to ride on Han Fei's coattails. Han Fei only wanted 5 billion in resources. He could just give it to him when he got home. Seeing that all the humans were running, Li Jian immediately shouted, "Come on, follow them." Someone said, "What about Qin Shuang?" Li Jian said grumpily, "He is no longer Qin Shuang. Look at his murderous aura. He doesn't know us at all. On the martial Emperor city's side, Bai Yu seemed to know what this hand was, so he moved faster than Li Dian. The demons and the underwater humans, seeing that everyone ran away as soon as they saw the golden arm, panicked. Although there were no sun, moon, or stars behind the bronze door, they had to chase after them. When Qin Shuang opened the crack in the void and completely appeared, everyone had already rushed to the inside of the bronze door. His eyes were scarlet, and his throat erupted with a voice that did not sound like a human's. Can't run away. Well then, Han Fei didn't care what was behind the bronze gate. The golden arm was obviously targeting him. In the previous battle, it had sucked 2 mouthfuls of blood while it was still alive, and it had almost interfered several times. Even if he wanted to fight, he couldn't. There were so many kings here. If it took turns to parasites, wouldn't it be the one who would be injured in the end? Inside and outside the bronze gate were 2 different worlds. Han Fei and the others rushed in and immediately felt the bombardment of lightning all over the sky. Everyone felt as if they had been hit in the head. Not everyone could do something like myriad lightning body refinement. Han Fei was puzzled. It looked like the thunder purgatory. The Snow Lady replied, "The lightning will only disappear when the sun, moon, and stars appear." This place was known as the Eternal Lightning Prison before the outside world was destroyed. It is said that the most terrifying lightning here is comparable to heavenly tribulation. Han Fei's eyes lit up. Where is the lightning comparable to the heavenly tribulation? Chapter 2009. Others avoided heavenly tribulations as if they were snakes or scorpions. But Han Fei was different. He had been struck since he was a child. Every time he deduced the void fishing art, he would be burnt to a crisp. It was not that he had never stayed in the Thunder Prison before. Now that he could use the yin-yang millstone, he could completely transform the thunderbolts here into the purest energy to temper his physical body. Although he had practiced the void fire refinement art, it didn't mean that the pure mystic body was useless. Han Fei had been practicing both. Otherwise, how could he cultivate so fast? When Han Fei asked where the lightning of tribulation was, the Snow Lady and Huang Jie were speechless. Huang Jie said, "It's recorded that the lightning comparable to the heavenly tribulation can only be encountered in the depths of the eternal thunder prison. But I advise you not to go. If you can survive until the sun, moon, and stars appear, the eternal thunder prison will disappear. Then you will have other places to go." "Why?" Huang Jie smiled grimly. "Because since ancient times, no one who has gone to the depths of the eternal thunder prison has come back alive." Han Fei frowned. "Is it that exaggerated? What if someone came back and didn't tell you?" Huang Jie said, "Every time the Imperial Palace is opened, what happened here will eventually spread out. How can we not know this? Even if someone really went in and came out safely, they should have risen in the chaotic Azure Sea long ago. But in fact, except for a few people, most of those who really rose in the Age of Doom were the first-generation Imperial Palace explorers." The Snow Lady nodded. "I agree with Huang Jie on this point. Everyone who went to the depths of the Eternal Thunder Prison died. We went and died together. Because we didn't go there, we were the first to walk out of the Imperial Palace." Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, Han Fei and the others couldn't help but look back, and their faces changed drastically. Qin Shuang of the Mermaid Royal Family also came in. Han Fei immediately cursed. "Why is it haunting me?" Huang Jie was speechless. "Why do I feel that this thing is coming for you? Do you want me to poison it? I advise you not to. If you take 1 hit, you'll be half dead. If you take 2 hits, you can find someone to bury you. If you want to go, I won't stop you." Hearing this, Huang Jie took a deep breath. "Forget it then." Next door, Qiu Yueming, Su Yin, Hong Yu, and Liang Yin heard everything clearly. They were also speechless. Han Fei was offending people wherever he went. Previously, he had fought against the heaven-opening skeleton in the Avarice Temple. Now, there was a golden arm that even he had to run away from. Although they didn't know why, they just ran away. Even Han Fei was no match for them, let alone them. Swoosh, 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 the kings of the various factions ran madly towards the depths of the Thunder Prison. Boom, boom, boom. However, the sky was filled with lightning, pouring down in torrents. Everyone seemed to be carrying hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of lightning bolts as they forced their way forward. Therefore, mistakes were inevitable. Some people ran fast, while others ran slow. No matter how strong you were, there would always be a difference in strength. One of the 100 demon race's lobster kings was the slowest, so he was the last. All of a sudden, all the kings heard a loud kacha sound erupt. When he turned around to take a look, he saw the lobster head rolling in the lightning bolts as it flew toward him. His body seemed to have been detonated and exploded into pieces. When they looked again, they saw a golden fist slowly retracting at the place of the explosion. Long Chao. Asshole, what the hell is that? Pang Jia of the 100 demon race was greatly shocked. A sea expansion cultivator couldn't even resist a punch from the golden arm. The lobster named Long Chao was not completely dead because his head was blown off. He still had a chance. However, before Long Chao could reconstruct his body, he saw a golden hand pinching his head. Instantly, the lobster's head was blown into pieces. This king couldn't be more dead. When Huang Jie saw this, he immediately exclaimed, "Just one punch? Why else do you think I ran?" In the Eternal Thunder Waterfall, Ji Xian, who had rushed in first, slowed down a lot after running for a while. He ran so far because he knew that Han Fei was so fast that even heaven-opening cultivators couldn't catch up with him. Therefore, he had to run further away. Otherwise, it would be too obvious that he was being bombarded by lightning. He was betting that Han Fei wouldn't come in, because Han Fei had a total of 6 kings with him, and many of them were first-generation explorers of the Imperial Palace in the Age of Doom. Those people couldn't be ignorant of the dangers of the Eternal Thunder Prison. Phew, Ji Xian slowed down a little and let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was shocked. Han Fei had already become so strong. Apart from those at the heaven-opening stage, who else could suppress him? According to this person's unscrupulous and vengeful behavior, how could the Grand Purity Palace stop him when he became a heaven-opening cultivator someday? Ji Xian thought to himself, if he could get out of here, he had to ask the ancestral patriarch and Bei Luochen of the Wuji Heaven to kill Han Fei. If he didn't get rid of this guy, he would be a big problem in the future. However, not long after Ji Xian slowed down and thought about Han Fei, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. When he looked back, he was shocked to see streaks of light covered in blood fleeing wildly. Ji Xian. Among them, the leader of the human race was none other than Han Fei. This guy's body was like a golden light, running and stopping. Ji Xian was dumbfounded. Zhou Fu couldn't even stop him for such a short time. Han Fei was coming at them again. However, what puzzled Ji Xian was that the Snow Girls and Huang Jie were all crazy. Han Fei didn't know how dangerous this place was. But how could the first-generation explorers of the Imperial Palace not know? Why did they run in here too? We can't run away. Behind, someone shouted, "Great Tao Shadow! Ah, save me!" Puff! In the distance, Ji Xian heard someone crying for help. It seemed that a king had died. If Han Fei took the lead to run, who would kill the enemy behind him? Unfortunately, this was not the time to think about this. The key now was that Han Fei had caught up. Of course, Ji Xian was also burning his blood. At this moment, Han Fei had already seen Ji Xian. But the problem was that on the human side, Qiu Yueming and Su Yin didn't seem to be good at speed and were about to fall behind. Especially Qiu Yueming. She was not the master of the Immortal Palace, but a late king. Although she was not weak, her speed was much worse. At this moment, the last one was a king of the Seabed clan. This person had been killed, and it was Qiu Yueming's turn next. Han Fei sighed slightly. Han Fei heaved a sigh. Since they were allies, he couldn't just watch them die. At this moment, Qiu Yueming had already burned her blood to escape. However, since she was covered in blood, the others naturally had to burn their blood to escape too. At this time, whoever fell last basically meant death. After running for a long time, this was already the 3rd death. How many people were there in total? He had to kill them all, one at a time, and then all of them would be finished. Just when Qiu Yueming was horrified and thought she was going to die, she saw a golden light suddenly appeared in front of her. When Han Fei flipped his hand, the sacrificing fist mark broke out and blasted towards Qin Shuang, who was about to pounce. He grabbed Qiu Yueming with the other hand and flashed forward 30,000 kilometers with a swish. After 30,000 kilometers, before Qiu Yueming realized what was going on, Han Fei had grabbed Su Lian with the other hand and flashed another 100,000 kilometers away. After a few leaps, Han Fei caught up with Liang Yin and the others who were in the front. Su Lian said, "Thank you for your help, fellow cultivator." Qiu Yueming said, "Thank you so much. Qiu Yueming will remember your kindness." Han Fei, however, said casually, "Where is the deepest part of the eternal thunder waterfall? The power of lightning is at least 5 times stronger than before. Everyone is getting slower and slower. I'm afraid I can't carry you anymore." Huang Jie said, "Nobody knows." Han Fei asked, just as he was about to kill Ji Xian first. His heart suddenly moved. He saw a golden light breaking through the void. Who else could it be but the puppet Qin Shuang? Shoot! So fast? Han Fei subconsciously activated his Dao and activated the crafty time technique again. BM rumble. After 2 sacrificing punches, Han Fei was blown away for more than 3,000 kilometers with blood flowing out his mouth and nose. Originally, the kings were not too far away from each other, but the moment the golden arm approached Han Fei, all of them immediately moved away. Zhou Bai of the Seabed Human Clan even roared, "Let's go. That thing is bothering Han Fei. It's our chance to escape." Han Fei didn't feel good. Are they really going to fight me? Why? But Han Fei still shouted to the Snow Girls and the others, "You go first." The main thing was that the Snow Lady and the others were not strong enough to resist this golden arm at all. They would be dead after just 1 attack. Only a few people here could resist 1 or 2 attacks, or they could resist 1 or 2 attacks with their heaven-opening techniques. No one could resist this arm. But the good thing was that the arm couldn't take it down. He would be fine as long as he didn't get too close to it. However, Han Fei didn't have the habit of helping other people. "I'm fighting here and creating an opportunity for you to escape?" Who was the one who shouted just now? Zhou Bai of the Seabed Human Clan? Fine. You're using me as a shield? Am I giving you face? On the other side, Zhou Bai was running wildly with the 2 kings, not daring to stop. But suddenly, he saw a flash of golden light. When he took a closer look, he found that it was none other than Han Fei. The next moment, Zhou Bai's face changed greatly, and he said in horror, "Not good. Let's split up and run." Chapter 2010. Zhou Bai didn't expect Han Fei to be so fast. 1 second, he was chased by the golden arm, and the next second, Han Fei had caught up with him. What he didn't understand was that the golden arm could control others. Qin Shuang might still have some consciousness to resist, so the golden arm didn't have such high mobility. Otherwise, the golden arm would have caught up with him at the beginning. Han Fei didn't target Zhou Bai, because Zhou Bai was the strongest among the seabed humans. Qin Shuang was already having a hard time fighting him. If the golden arm controlled Zhou Bai, it would be even more difficult to kill him. However, these 2 ordinary kings were not strong, and their physiques were not strong. Han Fei wished the golden arm could kill these kings. Han Fei stopped a shark man. When the shark man saw that Han Fei gave up Zhou Bai and stopped him instead, he was furious. There were wolves ahead and tigers behind. If he didn't try his best, he would lose his life. He roared, soul-destroying demonic sound, roar, Poochie, with a flash of golden light. Han Fei fought at close range, but the golden arm came late. Before the shark man could roar, he was pierced by the 5 fingers of the golden arm. Chilla. Han Fei took the opportunity to poke the shark man's flesh and blood, but he didn't have a chance to annihilate this person. However, in this eternal thunder prison, once his body was destroyed, it was difficult to survive in such crazy lightning with only his soul and flesh. Han Fei retreated quickly and continued to run away. About 10 minutes later, the other king of the seabed humans besides Zhou Bai was also killed by Han Fei in almost the same way. Zhou Bai was so scared that he activated all his secret methods, fearing that he would die in Han Fei's hands. In fact, Han Fei didn't want to kill him at all. As long as these top masters didn't die, the power of the golden arm would be limited. Once Zhou Bai, Peng Jia, Ji Xian by Yu, and even the Snow Girl were possessed by the golden arm, Han Fei didn't know how powerful they would be. Although the others also wanted to split up and run, such as running to the sides in an attempt to take a detour and leave this place. However, it was also at this moment that a circular electric ring suddenly spread out like a ripple. It was so fast that it quickly trapped everyone within it. Buzz, Han Fei was about to chase the golden arm away when he suddenly found that the golden arm stopped. Instead of chasing him, it retreated tens of thousands of kilometers with the electric current. Han Fei was confused. Was the golden arm afraid of electricity? Boom, boom, boom. Feeling the power of the lightning, Han Fei found that the lightning in this minefield was indeed much stronger. Even if he resisted it head-on, every time he was struck, he would unconsciously tremble, which had seriously interfered with his movement. Fortunately, the golden arm didn't chase after him, which was a good thing. At this moment, the various forces gathered together in twos and threes. Other than Ji Xian's figure, there were a total of 22 people here. In that short period of time, Han Fei had killed one Zhou Fu from the Wuji heavens, but the golden arm had killed 5. Han Fei didn't know whether he should thank it or thank it. Zhou Bai, who had become a commander without an army, had already joined the 100 Demons clan. However, there were only 2 people left on the 100 Demons clan side. Including Zhou Bai, there were only 3 people left. Fortunately, Peng Jia and Zhou Bai were not weak. If they were ordinary kings, this team would probably be gone. At this moment, Huang Jie shouted, "Don't fight. There seems to be less lightning ahead." Seeing Huang Jie running back, Han Fei thought of something and didn't provoke an attack the 100 Demons clan and the underwater humans again. After all, it was not a bad thing to keep these people alive. Fortunately, they were at the bottom just now. Otherwise, the human race would probably be at the bottom now. More importantly, Huang Jie said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "It seems that we can't get out now. I saw Ji Xian just now. We can't get out." Han Fei leaped with golden light and launched a tentative strike at the edge of the lightning circle, only to frown. His power was absorbed by the lightning barrier. One Ji Xian was not a big deal. At most, he could escape, but it was not a good thing that he couldn't get out. However, at this moment, the golden arm was outside anyway. Han Fei didn't believe that the danger inside would be more dangerous than the golden arm. At this moment, Bai Yu from the Martial Emperor's city said to Han Fei, "Han Fei, this is not the time to fight. There has never been any news from the depths of the Eternal Thunder Penitentiary." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Actually, I don't like fighting. I'm not interested in fighting. I just have no choice." Bai Yu's mouth twitched. He was speechless. "You don't like fighting? You have no choice? You already have a huge criminal record in the Martial Emperor's city. The 36 Xian heavens are in a foul atmosphere because of you. You say you don't like fighting?" Of course, Bai Yu could understand the hatred between Yin Yang Heaven and Tai Ching Wuji. Anyway, this was the speculation of the Martial Emperor's city recently. Once Han Fei opened the sky, the position of the leader of the 36 Xian heavenly venerables would probably change hands. On the side of the Merman royal family, Li Dian also said, "The Merman royal family doesn't have any records of this place. We must be careful." Li Dian was no longer hostile to Han Fei now. Just now, Han Fei told him to run. Now, he naturally returned the favor, indicating that everything here was indeed unknown. Even the Merman royal family hadn't been here before. Of course, Han Fei knew what Bai Yu and Li Dian meant. The two of them were hinting for Han Fei to keep more kings for now. They might be useful later. They could temporarily work together. When there was danger, they could push Peng Jia and the other 2 into the Eternal Thunder Penitentiary. This would greatly increase their chances of survival in the Imperial Palace or the Eternal Thunder Penitentiary. Han Fei glanced at the 3 of them and smiled. Then he said to the Snow Ladies, "Let's go. Let's go deeper." Half an hour later, Han Fei and the others encountered fewer and fewer lightning bolts. The power of the lightning was also becoming more stable. When they were struck by lightning, their bodies only trembled and felt slightly numb. However, It was impossible for their vitality to dissipate after being struck by lightning. Besides, it didn't look like a heavenly tribulation. If all heavenly tribulations were like this, the chaotic vast sea would have been full of kings. At this time, what Han Fei and the others saw were 5 desolate graves lined up in a row. In front of the 5 graves, there was a tablet with an inscription on it. Emperors have 6 lives. 5 proofs of immortality. Only 6 lives can be enlightened. The Tao of the 5 lives should be left to the future generations. The path of Tao is difficult and against the heaven. It is dangerous to prove one's Tao. 1 life after 100 deaths is called luck. 1 life for all living beings is called heavenly fate. With luck and difficulty, there are layers of barriers. If you are blessed by heavenly fate, you will only have a slim chance of survival in the great battle. Future generations should enlighten themselves. Seeing the inscription on the tablet, everyone was shocked. Emperors have 6 lives. 5 proofs of immortality. Only 6 lives can be enlightened. It meant that the emperor here had used 6 lives to prove his Tao. And the 5 desolate graves in front of them were the graves of the previous 5 emperors. Although the records said that the great Tao of the 5 worlds had to be passed down, it was not easy to obtain the great Tao of the 5 worlds. It was also related to luck. Swish, everyone was looking at the tablet. At this moment, they saw Ji Xian, who had run away for a long time, flew back. Han Fei's eyes lit up and he shouted, "How dare you come back?" However, Ji Xian also shouted, "Han Fei, this place is weird. I'm a human after all. Look behind you." Everyone couldn't help but look behind Ji Xian. After about 3 breaths of time, they saw that the electric ring that had just spread out was now beginning to shrink. The point was that not only did the electric ring shrink, but there was also a purple thunderbolt tribulation cloud above his head. "Hiss, heavenly tribulation?" The kings exclaimed, and someone shouted, "Ji Xian, why did you bring the heavenly tribulation back?" Ji Xian scolded, "Do you think I brought it here?" Han Fei frowned. This purple thunderbolt was completely different from the one just now. If this thing didn't stop, how many people here could resist it? But the heavenly tribulation couldn't talk. When Ji Xian came back, he immediately put on a battle suit, carried a giant shield, and prepared to launch a secret method. Except for Ji Xian, everyone was the same when they saw the purple heavenly tribulation. Han Fei found it strange. Why would a heavenly tribulation appear here? Did the purple thunderbolt have to be a heavenly tribulation? Han Fei was fearless. Even a purple thunderbolt couldn't kill him. He might as well try it first. The lightning ring's range shrunk to only 500 kilometers. Then, the lightning ring finally stopped, because the entire ring was covered by the purple tribulation clouds. Rumble, boom, boom, boom. For a moment, the hair of the 20 kings were disheveled, and their battle suits were torn. When Han Fei was hit by a purple thunderbolt, his body went numb for almost a minute. But no matter how powerful the thunderbolt was, Han Fei felt that it was not as powerful as a heavenly tribulation. This thunderbolt contains the great Tao, but it's not so strong, and it's not destructive enough. Why? Only Han Fei was thinking about this question, because the others didn't think the purple thunderbolt was weak. One of the kings from the martial emperor city was even injured. The Snow Lady and the others all used the chaotic energy and the ultimate great Tao. Only Huang Jie was smart. He took out the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Furnace and went inside. When the Grand Supreme Purple Smoke Furnace appeared, except for the Snow Lady, Liang Yin, Su Lian, and Hong Yu were all speechless. So the Yin-Yang Heaven and the 10,000 Poison Heaven had already formed an alliance? Chapter 2011. The so-called Purple Heavenly Tribulation was actually much slower than the normal Heavenly Tribulation of the Eternal Lightning Waterfall. On average, it would only strike 2 to 3 times in a breath of time. If it was in the Eternal Lightning Waterfall, with the sky full of lightning striking at you, it wouldn't be a problem for you to strike more than 100 times in a breath of time. But even so, the kings did not dare to be careless, because the purple lightning showed no signs of drying up. Everyone was just paralyzed, one paralysis after another. It could be said that they were being restrained by the purple tribulation. Han Fei secretly activated the yin-yang millstone. In his heart, the yin-yang millstone was running. As long as the powerful purple lightning rushed into Han Fei's body, half of its power would be devoured by the yin-yang millstone and then transformed into the purest energy flowing in Han Fei's body. All the purity of this energy was much higher than that of a top-grade spirit stone. The main reason was that it had a high efficiency. In just 100 seconds, some transparent mucus appeared on the surface of Han Fei's body. This mucus was emitting a strong fragrance. All the kings couldn't help but look at Han Fei. What's wrong with this guy? Why did it smell so good? When they saw the mucus on Han Fei's body, they were shocked. Han Fei was training with the purple heavenly tribulation. The so-called mucus should be the impurities discharged from Han Fei's body. However, had the level of impurities reached such a high level? Apart from being a little sticky, it looked extremely sparkling and translucent. Not only did it not have any stench, it even had a fragrant aroma. Hong Yu decided that if he could get out this time, he would definitely break free from the Grand Pure Infinity. Han Fei's potential was beyond his imagination. He had once seen the chaos heavens grand, primordial heavens splitting. His body had been tempered to the phenomenal success stage, and the turbid fluids in his body had been expelled, leaving behind a faint stench. It could be seen that Tai Yuan's body refining was not as good as Han Fei's. Han Fei hadn't opened the sky yet. After all, it hadn't been long since he became a king. But this could show his potential even more. He hadn't opened the sky yet, but he was already like this. If one day Han Fei could open the sky, he would probably be able to compete with the Grand Pure Wuji. Even if they faced each other head-on, he wouldn't be afraid. Boom, puff, cough, cough. While everyone was slightly distracted, the purple lightning fell, and many people groaned. At the martial emperor's city's side, there was a king. At this moment, he was already covered in blood, or rather, his entire body was covered in blood. Although Bai Yu was strong, but he could only control 3 tortoise shell treasures to block the man. It was obvious that this person had just become an enlightened warrior. Otherwise, they would have more or less been able to withstand it. After all, while the purple lightning was powerful, after being struck a few more times, everyone realized that it wasn't as powerful as a true heavenly tribulation. Its destructive power was also slightly lacking, after the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Except for those who were wearing sea-quelling bizarre treasure-level battle suits. All the lords had changed their battle suits. Many of them had lost more than 30% of their vitality. They had already used up all of their stored resources. After 1.5 hours, the sea-quelling bizarre treasure-level battle suits on Han Fei and a few other kings began to shatter, and the energy of the kings was reduced by half on average. Among them, the giant beasts were a special case. The 4 giant beasts, perhaps because of their huge bodies, withstood the lightning bolts the whole time. Just like Han Fei, they must have benefited from their physique. After the time it took for 4 incense sticks to burn, he suddenly felt that the power of the purple lightning had increased by several times. Not good. Facing the suddenly strengthened purple lightning, the new enlightened warrior from the martial emperor's city couldn't withstand the 3 giant shields in front of him and finally exploded after 1.5 hours. Just when everyone thought this person was going to die, he flipped his hand and picked up another tortoise shell. A defensive array appeared on the tortoise shell, and more than 50,000 spiritual fruits around him were crushed and sucked into his mouth. Everyone was speechless. The people of the martial emperor's city were indeed rich. Because they weren't strong enough, they lost 3 sea-quelling bizarre treasure-level shields in a row, but they still had other treasures. On the human side, Su Lian was the first to fail. Su Lian was the palace master of the god-refining heaven. His soul power might be strong enough, but his body wasn't. The snow girls had ice armor, ice shield, and 10,000-year ice barrier. Huang Jie had the grand supreme purple smoke furnace. Liang Yinin could distort the heavenly tribulation with her mysterious sound. Han Yu was even more ridiculous. He was surrounded by 5 giant corpses, and only 1/6 of the power of the lightning could fall on him. Only Su Yin was still lacking in speed, and his body wasn't strong enough. However, after thinking for a while, Han Fei decided to save him. Just as Su Yin's body was cracking, thousands of dark steel pillars suddenly appeared around him. A large amount of purple lightning fell on these dark steel pillars, causing them to explode one after another. However, Su Yin was still safe and sound. Su Yin knew that Han Fei was saving him. Before he had time to thank him, he took out 10,000 spiritual fruits and ate them to recover. At the same time, a healing divine light descended, and Su Yin's injuries were slowly recovering. At the end of the fourth incense stick, the purple lightning suddenly dissipated. Apart from the newly ascended king from the martial emperor's city, who seemed to be in a difficult situation, the others had all survived thanks to the help of their respective powerhouses. Clap, clap. Han Fei felt that his strength had improved a little. His strength should be thousands of times stronger. He patted the Grand Supreme purple smoke furnace and said, "Old Huang, come out." The lid of the Grand Supreme purple smoke furnace flew up, and Huang Jie walked out calmly, without any injury. Huang Jie looked around and couldn't help but sigh. It's really different with a furnace. But Han Fei said, "Don't be too happy. This is just the beginning." The reason why he said that was because there was a strange sound in the sky. Liang Yin's expression changed greatly. Not good. The demonic sound of the heavenly law can invade one's divine soul, causing confusion and losing oneself. You must guard your divine soul. Otherwise, once you're confused by the demonic sound, your divine soul will shrink and wither. The kings looked at the 5 tombs and seemed to understand something. The venerable emperor had 5 lives, but none of them could achieve immortality. However, he didn't want the great path of his 5 lives to be cut off, so he needed an inheritance. The purple lightning just now was clearly not a heavenly tribulation, but it had the might of a Taoist charm. It was probably a great Tao, right? Immediately, everyone looked at each other. If that was the case, didn't it mean that someone had inherited the great path of thunder in the past half an hour? For a moment, everyone looked at the king of the martial emperor's city who had been struck the most miserably. Everyone made it through, but this guy was the most miserable. Could it be that he was actually carrying the great path? The Snow Maiden replied, "He's most likely stabilizing himself. He just used 5 sea-quelling variant treasures and consumed over 300,000 spirit fruits, supreme-grade spirit stones, and countless chaotic energy. He's definitely not just trying to block the purple lightning tribulation." However, since that guy was from the martial emperor's city, no one would touch him. Apart from everything else, the people of the martial emperor's city had a lot of treasures. Bai Yu was one of the 8 kings of the martial emperor's city and directly controlled the super resource store. Therefore, anyone who wanted to touch the martial emperor's city had to consider their own strength and treasures. At this moment, the demonic sound of the heavenly law came. Liang Yin's flute appeared in her hand, and the sound of the flute refreshed the people of the human clan. The sound of Liang Yin's flute could make the divine soul extremely clear. A melody even appeared between their eyebrows to protect their divine soul. Huang Jie also threw an elixir to each of them. This is a soul-suppressing poison pill. It can protect the divine soul. By the way, will Han Yu get it to you? Huang Jie looked at Han Fei, and Han Yu immediately said, "Of course. The Wild Corpse Heaven will never be a lackey of the Grand Pure Realm. After we leave the Imperial Palace, we will definitely rebel against the Grand Pure Realm." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Okay, then it's a deal. If you don't keep your promise, you have to think about the consequences." Han Yu nodded quickly. "Of course. I will kill Ji Xian with my own hands when I have the chance." Han Fei didn't kill Han Yu because he was the master of the Wild Corpse Heaven after all. If he died, it would be troublesome to subdue the Wild Corpse Heaven, so he might as well wait for him to take the Wild Corpse Heaven with him, which would save him time and effort. Ji Xian glanced at Han Yu coldly, which gave Han Yu goosebumps all over. However, compared with Han Fei, Han Yu didn't think it was a problem to offend Ji Xian at all. Light up! The frenzied demonic sound was getting louder and louder. But only half an hour later, on the side of the 100 Demons clan and the Seabed human clan, besides Pang Jia and Zhou Bai, another king of the 100 Demons clan suddenly attacked Zhou Bai. Zhou Bai shouted, "Not good. He's crazy." Pang Jia slapped the clam demon, which buzzed, but the latter turned into a giant shell and spun like a blade, trying to kill Pang Jia. At this moment, Zhou Bai roared, "Brother Pang, he's a wind demon. We have to kill him." The two kings joined hands and launched their strongest attacks in the demonic sound with bloodshot eyes. The combat ability of the crazy clam demon seemed to have plummeted. After only 5 seconds, it was destroyed by them. It couldn't even be reborn. The heavenly path's demonic sound swept across and annihilated it. This was the first king to die in the second round, and when this person died, Han Fei actually felt his blood and qi surging. Deep in his heart, killing intent overflowed. He stared at Ji Xian, and the latter was terrified. Thinking that Han Fei was going to kill him, he took a few steps back while coughing up blood. Near the clam demon's death, an 8-eyed spider of the giant beast bloodline revealed its true form. Its body immediately expanded. If it wasn't for the fact that this space was only 250 miles wide, the entire lightning ring space would have been torn apart by this spider. Pooh. At first, the sky was full of spider silk, which swept everybody. Then shark claws fell. The toad roared, "Eight Eyes, wake up. You didn't listen to me when I told you that you weren't strong enough. Now you've lost your mind just by listening to a sound." Clang, the spider's claws hit the toad's back, but the toad was fast enough and jumped away. The one-horned female dragon shouted, "Eight Eyes has gone crazy. We can't let it live." After the 8-eyed spider went berserk, one of the merfolk royalty also lost his way and attacked Li Jian directly. Li Jian roared, "Kill all the lost ones." Chapter 2012. Han Fei thought his resistance to the demonic sound wasn't bad. It was mainly because Liang Yin's flute played a good protective role. All the clans died, but the human race was fine. However, the good times didn't last long. While resisting the heavenly demonic sound, they watched the giant beast, named 8 Eyes, being killed. Then, the king of the mermaid royal family was also killed by Li Dian and the other two. On the martial emperor city's side, Baiyu killed one person. 3 kings died in a row because of sound. Han Fei felt that his head was dizzy, as if raging waves were hitting his soul, and his head was hurting. At the end of the day, it was just a headache. Wait for the lantern. Cough, puff. Suddenly the flute stopped. Han Fei looked back, only to see Liang Yin bleeding from her eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Some kind of blue soul fire was jumping, and she was surrounded by musical notes. However, this protection still couldn't block the terrifying demonic sound of the heavenly path. Almost the moment Liang Yin's flute stopped, Qiu Yueming and Huang Jie's energy changed. When Han Fei looked, he saw Huang Jie took out a pile of pills and swallowed them. The next moment, chains appeared on his body. Huang Jie roared, "Soul lock with poison." Han Fei was shocked. Because of the demonic sound of the heavenly path, Huang Jie sealed his divine soul with great poison. As soon as Huang Jie said that, a big-headed doll appeared on Hong Yu's shoulder. The big-headed doll was pulling a string and murmured, "Fake death, soul control by string." Hong Yu's eyes were dull. The big-headed doll was actually a puppet that was controlling Huang Jie's body. They avoided the demonic sound of the heavenly path in this way. Because Su Yin was the master of the soul refining heavenly palace, his divine soul was extremely powerful. His strength was reflected at this moment. The demonic sound of the heavenly path didn't shake him at all. The Snow Lady, wearing an ice crown and holding an ice staff, raised her hand to the sky. "I seal, I suppress all doubts." Ice pillars rose from the Snow Lady's feet, like flowers blooming on the ground. In a moment, the Snow Lady was turned into an ice sculpture. Han Fei was surprised. None of the immortal masters of the heavenly palace were easy to deal with. Out of everyone here, only Qiu Yueming wasn't the immortal palace master. However, Qiu Yueming tried to burn his soul to resist the demonic voice. However, the killing intent on her body surged, and her eyes were bloodshot. She no longer blocked the heavenly demonic sound. Not good. Everything happened too fast. Han Fei immediately used the Apocalypse Divine Art to try and save Qiu Yueming. However, Qiu Yueming came with his dual sabers. Blood gushed out from the blade. This was Qiu Yueming's weapon, blood-imbibing demon blade. When Qiu Yueming attacked, the blood-imbibing demon blade made Han Fei's blood flow unstable. At the same time, Han Fei felt a pillar in his mind attacking his soul. Roar! The 100-beast soul devouring roar burst out, and Han Fei's face instantly became clear and many array patterns surrounded him. Bang! Resisting the demonic sound of heaven's path and slapping Qiu Yueming away, Han Fei looked solemn. Was the Apocalypse Divine Art too late? Or had Qiu Yueming changed too thoroughly? With a thought, Han Fei activated the Great Path, and a strange stone was picked up by him. It was the gravitational magnetic stone he had obtained from the king crab. While Qiu Yueming was being sent flying, Han Fei flashed to her side in a golden flash and pressed down on Qiu Yueming with a gravitational force. Immediately, Qiu Yueming stopped moving, because she had to use all her strength to resist the gravitational force. This was a stone that had suppressed the king crab for more than 80,000 years. It could even suppress behemoths, let alone a person. Han Fei also felt the malice of the demonic sound of heaven's path. Since the Apocalypse Divine Art couldn't save Qiu Yueming, he had to wait until the demonic sound of heaven's path was over. If it still didn't work, Qiu Yueming would have to kill or control. Qiu Yueming was temporarily suppressed, but Liang Yin was already kneeling on the ground. Liang Yin had released all the resources around her. Countless spiritual fruits were crushed and absorbed by her. Han Fei thought he could still save her, so he smashed the Apocalypse Divine Art at Liang Yin. He could clearly feel Liang Yin's spirit being shaken, and she absorbed the resources around even faster. As for Han Fei, he was having a headache. It was very unlikely that the demonic sound of heaven's path could penetrate his soul. However, in order to prevent the heavenly demonic sound from suddenly exploding like the purple lightning just now, Han Fei took out a fishing rod and made 2 hooks in a row. Finally, he caught a soul-calming pill and stuffed it directly into his mouth. Baiyu. Baiyu was in charge of the super resource store. The moment the soul-calming pill appeared, he immediately recognized it. But where did Han Fei get the soul-calming pill from? Was it so casual? Han Fei stuffed the soul-calming pill into his mouth without thinking. Then, he glanced at Baiyu and didn't plan to explain. Let the others guess. In any case, he couldn't reveal his ability to fish from time. Who knew if Martial Emperor City had any connections with the people of the Temple of Time? As soon as the soul-calming pill entered his stomach, Han Fei felt his soul was clear, and the demonic sound of heaven's path was blocked. Just like that, after half an hour, the demonic sound of heaven's path came to an abrupt end. Immediately, everyone was relieved. Han Fei came to Qiu Yueming immediately and put away the gravitational force. Clank, clank. Unfortunately, the moment Han Fei put away the gravitational force, Qiu Yueming attacked with all her strength. Her double blades hit Han Fei. Although Han Fei was hit, he tried to trap Qiu Yueming with a void line. But as soon as the void line touched Qiu Yueming's soul, Han Fei instantly felt that his soul was shaking, as if a weird power was trying to pollute his soul. Instantly, the Tao Convergence Sword was activated. Han Fei killed Qiu Yueming himself. Huang Jie, Su Yin, and the others had just woken up. Seeing this, their hearts sank. Han Fei didn't blame himself at all. He said, "She's hopeless. What a pity." Then, Han Fei looked at Liang Yin. What happened? Liang Yin said to everyone, "Inheritance. The inheritance of Tao. I learned a lot just now. My strength has increased by at least 50%. I guess the guy in the Wu Emperor City was in the same situation as me." Snow Lady said, "But 5 kings died this time." Everybody was shocked. This venerable emperor killed 5 people just to pass on his Tao. No wonder Snow Lady and the others said they had to wait for the sun, moon, and stars to come out. It seemed that this place was indeed dangerous. But there was also the golden arm outside. If they stayed outside, the golden arm could kill most people here. There was no chance of survival. Huang Jie said, "What's important is not that 5 people died. It's that this is the second Tao. There are 3 more graves over there." At this moment, the human race had the most people left. Including Han Fei and Ji Xian, there were 7 survivors. The 100 demons and the sea human race each had 1 survivor. The Wu Emperor City had 3 survivors. The mermaid royal family had 3 survivors. The giant beast clan had 3 survivors. There were 17 in total. Including those who came in the past 2 days, there were 27 kings in total. In just a few days, 10 of them had died. It was not an exaggeration to say that the imperial palace only had a slim chance of survival. According to the law of survival, there were only 3 people who could survive this time. Baiyu said, "Han Fei, if we can leave this place, can you and I restrain that golden arm together?" Han Fei asked, "Can you maintain the combat power of the heaven-opening state?" Baiyu shook his head. "No, 5 minutes is the most I can do." Han Fei said, "Let me tell you, I'm not afraid of that golden arm. If I really go out, the probability of me dying is almost the same." The toad behemoth said, "Everyone, let's not worry about whether we are enemies or not. This is only the second Tao. What about the third one?" Ji Xian also said, "Han Fei, in order to chase me, so many people died. Is it worth it?" Han Fei sneered. "Do you think I'm chasing you?" However, Zhou Bai suddenly said, "Stop. Did you see anything?" The kings. The petite squid woman of the giant beast clan, except for the toad and the one-eyed female dragon, said, "I seem to have seen something too." Han Fei and the others were dumbfounded. What was it? Pucci. Immediately, everyone looked at the humans. Han Fei also looked in Hong Yu's direction, and Hong Yu also looked at his left hand. He felt that his body seemed to have suddenly become lighter. However, when everyone looked at him, they found that one of Hong Yu's arms and the upper part of his waist and abdomen were broken and falling. Huang Jie said, "No, old Hong, your lower half is cut off." Hong Yu. In everyone's vision, Hong Yu's upper body was sliding to one side from his ribs. Hong Yu's body had been cut off at some point. Corpse King possession. At that moment, Hong Yu was horrified. When was he cut off? Why didn't he feel anything? Hong Yu's body suddenly dried up. He grabbed his lower half of his thigh with his left hand and moved his upper body. His blood vessels intertwined like worms, restoring his body. Hong Yu's reaction was fast enough, but everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes. Hong Yu's body seemed to be cut by a sharp net. Bloody lines appeared all over his body, and he was cut into countless small pieces. However, these small pieces did not fall for the time being. The kings were all horrified. "What the hell is this? Isn't it too fast?" Baiyu shouted. "It's speed, the extreme speed in the normal world. This has always been just a guess. I didn't expect it to really exist." While Baiyu was surprised, Han Fei had already smashed at Hong Yu with an apocalyptic divine technique. Hong Yu, who had not been cut into countless pieces, was hit by the healing divine light, and the bloody lines all over his body disappeared almost instantly. Hong Yu was horrified. The moment he felt the apocalyptic divine technique, he almost cried. It was all thanks to Han Fei's help. Otherwise, he would have died. Chapter 2013. Fuse. When Hong Yu was cut for the second time, Han Fei immediately fused with Little Black and Little White. Not just Han Fei, but everyone else did the same. They all put on their battle suits, activated their Tao, fused with their spiritual beasts, covered themselves with spiritual energy, and began to pay attention to the changes around them. Perhaps it was because Ji Xian was alone that he was targeted, although he had fused with his spiritual beast at the first moment. Although he also fused with his spiritual beasts, the three-tailed crabfish's tail was cut into pieces as if it were a piece of paper. Ji Xian had an idea and shouted, "Big scissors, heavenly serpent spin." Ji Xian's heavenly serpent scissors were split into 2 and spun quickly, trying to protect Ji Xian. But even so, this method couldn't protect his whole body. Besides, he was facing a mysterious creature that was extremely fast. He was almost at the mercy of the enemy. Puff, 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 a series of piercing sounds rang out, and the king saw Ji Xian's body shattering. From beginning to end, he didn't even see his enemy clearly. Ji Xian, who had always thought that he was strong enough to enter the top 10 of the ocean expansion list, was cut crazily like a target at this moment. Without Han Fei's help, there was only a pile of fragments left in the blink of an eye. But a ball of soul fire appeared, and Ji Xian tried to shake the surroundings with his soul. However, in everyone's eyes, the soul fire was riddled with holes in the blink of an eye, like a broad leaf swept by a storm. Ji Xian's soul was also destroyed. Han Yu was horrified. Han Yu was horrified. If Han Fei had come to his rescue 1 second later, wouldn't he have been dead? At this moment, Ji Xian's voice echoed. Han Fei, boy, this is only the third Dao. I can't resist it, but can you? I just left 1 step earlier than you. The yin-yang heaven is not invincible after all. However, as soon as Ji Xian said that, Han Fei said, at least this thing can't hurt me. Besides, I can reverse time. Do you think Xian Qingzi and he Dao Yuan can find me? Haha, don't let me go. Han Fei. Ji Xian was filled with hatred. It was Han Fei who suddenly attacked him and Zhou Fu. It was Han Fei who forced him to escape into the eternal thunder purgatory. It was Han Fei who forced him to enter this 5 graves ground. He hated that he didn't kill Han Fei when he was weak. He hated that the ancestral patriarch paid too much attention to the sword god's 4 palaces and ignored Han Fei. It was not until the moment Ji Xian died that he heard Han Fei's mockery that he felt indescribably complicated. At this critical moment, Han Fei and the others had no time to pay attention to the conflict between Ji Xian and Han Fei. The layers of ice barriers set up by the Snow Maidens had mostly been shattered. Thankfully, there were many kings on the human side. Although they were still cut into pieces in an instant, they weren't dead yet because the ice barriers and sound barriers were still protecting them. Han Fei turned around and cast a heavenly awakening divine technique. And Han Fei, of course, also encountered this thing that was rushing at him. Even though Han Fei had fused with Little Black and Little White, all he could see was a 1-foot-long black shadow. At first, Han Fei didn't block it with the power of time. When the thing stabbed into Han Fei's body, it slowed down and revealed itself. Only then did Han Fei see what it looked like. It turned out to be a knife as thin as a cicada's wing and as thin as a chopstick. Information appeared in his eyes. Name Ultimate Blade, Introduction, a magical blade made of the pure great path of speed and the natural treasure unobstructed mystic crystal. It can avoid all the barriers in the void and achieve extreme speed in the main space. The Ultimate Blade is extremely sharp with its speed. Nothing under the level of a divine weapon can resist it. Quality, inferior quality divine weapon, spirit attachment, light sparrow, effect, unobstructed, recastable, unrefined. Remark, a inferior quality divine weapon shouldn't recognize its master easily. In fact, Han Fei only glanced at the information for a second. Because he didn't have time to stop, the Ultimate Blade pierced through his body. Yes, ever since he became a king, no one had been able to cut through his flesh. Only this blade could actually pierce through him. Although it took about a second or so, it was still a fact that it was penetrated. If this Ultimate Blade could pierce through him, it meant that even he couldn't resist it. However, with the speed of this Ultimate Blade, it was easy for it to hit him, but it was impossible for it to cut him. When this Ultimate Blade tried to cut him for the second time, the time in front of Han Fei twisted, and his palm was covered by the infinity water, which instantly clasped the Ultimate Blade. Puff, however, in the barrier of time, the Ultimate Blade, like a swimming fish, suddenly accelerated in the distorted time, broke through time, and cut off his palm at the same time. The infinity water was cut open by this thing. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Although the infinity water was water, it was still an ultra-quality, sea-quelling bizarre treasure, only 1 step away from becoming a divine weapon. However, just now, the Ultimate Blade jumped in the distorted time that he performed. It was obvious that it could cut through time. Han Fei seemed to suddenly understand something. Since this Ultimate Blade had reached the limit of speed, it should have reached the speed of light. At that level, it could jump into the river of time by itself. Besides, the ultimate blade was a pure part of the great path of speed, so it might not be affected by time. At most, it could block it for a while. When it slipped away from Han Fei's hand for the second time, the ultimate blade didn't come again. Because it had a soul attached to it, it could naturally tell who was stronger and who was weaker. Han Fei's ultimate blade was very durable, and it was possible that he would be killed. Therefore, the ultimate blade ignored Han Fei and this group of people and went directly to Pang Jia of the 100 Demons clan and Zhou Bai of the Sea Human clan. There were the least people here, so it should be possible. Looking at the ultimate blade that slipped away from him, Han Fei's hand was covered with healing divine light, and the broken hand was quickly reconnected. Seeing Han Fei's behavior of grabbing the ultimate blade with his bare hand, Liang Yin and the others were all speechless. Han Fei is such a freak. Can he even grab such an invisible thing? They had almost been caught by him. Now, all of them could see that it was a thin and long blade that looked like a chopstick. Clang, however, on Pang Jia's side. Unexpectedly, Pang Jia used some kind of secret technique and turned into his original body. A halo flowed on his shell like a rotating nebula, and the ultimate blade couldn't cut through it at all. In order to have an ally, Pang Jia naturally protected Zhou Bai. Therefore, this time, the two of them were completely fine. After a series of clangs, the ultimate blade couldn't cut through Pang Jia's shell even after thousands of cuts. Pang Jia immediately gave up. At this moment, Liang Yin suddenly shouted, Han Fei, it's looking for someone who suits it. Let him hibernate or resonate with it. Maybe you can get the great path of speed. Huh? Han Fei was taken aback. So that's how it is? Now, that thing had already found the toad and the one-horned female dragon. The toad shouted crazily, return to your original body. Hurry up. It will take a long time for this little thing to cut us to death. We could buy time to recover. As soon as the toad said that, it expanded rapidly. At the same time, the one-horned female dragon and the cuttlefish girl also expanded. The ultimate blade seemed to know that these giant beasts were difficult to deal with. Therefore, it only made a small hole in the toad's shell and slashed at the marshaled archcity's side. Seeing Baiyu take out a jade slip, Han Fei thought to himself, the marshaled archcity has many treasures. I can't be subdued by Baiyu. This ultimate blade was very powerful. If he could inherit the ultimate blade's pure great path of speed, it would be equivalent to obtaining a divine technique similar to the Golden Light Leap. How could Han Fei give up? With a whoosh, he unleashed the Golden Light Leap, deliberately displaying the special characteristic of the Golden Light Leap that allowed it to arrive in an instant. When Han Fei barged into the Martial Emperor City's camp, he saw his silhouette flickering in the air, leaving hundreds of afterimages in an instant. This was the instant flash without any obstacles. Han Fei had already learned this ability after he integrated the phantom glass wings into his body. As expected, the ultimate blade was immediately attracted by Han Fei. Although the ultimate blade was a weapon, it was composed of pure great path of speed. Therefore, it didn't seem inappropriate to call it the great path of speed. Now, he finally realized that the reason why people died here was because these great paths were simply invincible. Therefore, those who came before had basically all died. The Snow Maidens and the others still had the same mindset when they first entered the Imperial Palace. At that time, they had just become monarchs. Of course, they wouldn't be able to return. If they wanted to create the ultimate blade when they had just become monarchs, wouldn't they all die? Later on, although the Imperial Palace also allowed monarchs to enter, there were very few who could resist these great paths. This also caused this place to become a so-called dangerous place. In fact, these great paths were just looking for an inheritor. Previously, Han Fei only wanted to grab the ultimate blade and didn't show his talent and speed. Therefore, the ultimate blade didn't recognize him at all. Now that Han Fei's Golden Light Leap appeared, it was as if the ultimate blade had found a good friend. How could not come? Chapter 2014. Liang Yin obtained the heavenly demonic sound, and the man from the Martial Emperor City obtained the power of purple thunder, which might be the great way of thunder. Although the two of them didn't show it, Liang Yin said that her strength had increased by about 50%. Of course, Liang Yin's claim of 50% increase could also be due to her previous strength being relatively weak. But in any case, Han Fei felt that if he could get the ultimate blade, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. It could be said that with the ultimate blade, he would be invincible in the same realm. Maybe some people could barely resist it if they were prepared, but what if they were unprepared? Who could resist the ultimate blade? Swish, 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 swish. Since he was trying to lure the ultimate blade, Han Fei didn't want to defeat it by fighting. Instead, he flashed crazily, almost at his fastest speed. However, although the phantom glass wings could appear almost infinitely, as long as he appeared and disappeared, he couldn't avoid the ultimate blade. While Han Fei was flashing, his body had been pierced by the ultimate blade 7 or 8 times. It seemed that this kind of flashing ability couldn't lure the ultimate blade, which was about to go elsewhere to find the inheritance. However, Han Fei's golden light leap immediately attracted the ultimate blade again. Even when Han Fei performed the golden light leap, the infinity blade actually chased him into the void. This kind of leap was not as simple as escaping into the void, but leaping forward in the form of a spatial node that light could reach. The ultimate blade seemed to be quite curious about Han Fei's speed, so it directly chased after him. It didn't slow down at all and flew all the way here. Han Fei, on the other hand, leaped over. Because the ultimate blade didn't know where Han Fei was going, it could only chase after Han Fei after he appeared, which made it slow down. That was probably why the ultimate blade was so curious about Han Fei. Puff, as soon as Han Fei appeared, he was pierced through, and this time, a large amount of essence blood was taken away, about half of it. Han Fei was shocked. At this rate, his essence blood would be drained after 20 times. The ultimate blade was so fast that 20 times was very fast for it. Therefore, Han Fei activated the heavenly opening divine technique, gathered the invincible will around him, and forcibly slowed down the frequency of the ultimate blade piercing him. From being able to suck blood 20 times in an instant, he could only suck blood 3 times in a single breath. But even so, even with the heavenly awakening divine art, he didn't have enough chi and blood. Han Fei only held on for 5 seconds before he really started to run, because he had to. The ultimate blade seemed to be recognizing its master. His essence blood had been drained, and he was only left with 30%. If he wanted to recover, he needed some time. So Han Fei immediately activated the Gemini divine technique, and the white mist continued to run. However, the body of white mist would definitely be killed off quickly, while the body of black mist waved his fishing rod and fished for time in the void. That was because the ultimate blade had only appeared for a short period of time, just a few dozen breaths ago. Therefore, it wasn't very difficult to fish the ultimate blade. He only used it twice before a fake ultimate blade appeared. With a thought from Han Fei, the 2 ultimate blades began a battle of limits. And Han Fei escaped into reality, Gemini as one, and immediately performed the heavenly awakening divine technique. At the same time, tens of thousands of spiritual fruits around him collapsed at the same time to produce blood for himself. But the others didn't understand, wondering if Han Fei had already recovered that knife. Clank, clank, clank. Then they saw that there seemed to be 2 things flashing past in the air, fighting each other and colliding with each other, making sounds. An invisible battle seemed to have broken out around Han Fei, and Han Fei himself stood in it, crazily devouring spiritual fruits. Qi and blood surged in his body, and in just more than 20 seconds, his qi and blood overflowed from his body and soared into the sky. At this moment, the corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and he directly mobilized the ultimate blade that he could control to stab himself. Puff, puff, puff. His surging qi and blood were rapidly decreasing, and in less than 2 seconds, the overflowing qi and blood had disappeared. After another 2 seconds, Han Fei felt that the ultimate blade had established a connection with him. Han Fei was a king of body tempering, and the thickness and richness of his qi and blood were incomparable to that of ordinary kings. Moreover, Han Fei's bloodline level was extremely high, and the blood recognition was naturally related to the bloodline level, so it wasn't very difficult for him to do so. Therefore, when the ultimate blade pierced through Han Fei's body for the last time, it could never come out again, because it belonged to Han Fei. Han Fei felt that he suddenly understood a lot of truths in his mind. He felt like a ray of light, and light was walking in reality. The essence of reality and the void was that the void depended on reality, just like one was the outer skin and the other was the inner skin. The void was a part of reality. What didn't belong to reality was the endless void. The endless void broke through the outer skin and inner skin and went to an unexplorable place. After entering, there was only endless nothingness and darkness left. Therefore, Han Fei's previous understanding that reality and the void were a transition from one world to another was wrong. The relationship between reality and the void was like a thick layer of green sack under the skin of a watermelon. Therefore, the so-called tearing open the void was actually just opening up a layer of skin. But it was much more difficult to open the endless void. Ordinary strength would not be able to cut open the endless void. It was just like how the green sack of a watermelon was very thick. If one wanted to cut open the endless void, they would have to break the inner and outer skin. Therefore, more strength was needed, and the cut had to be deeper. And these only strengthened Han Fei's understanding of reality and the void. If he wanted to run as fast as the ultimate blade, according to his own understanding, he had to transform into a Tao. Turning himself into a part of the speed was a way to transform into a Tao. Han Fei was even amazed. If this was possible, it would almost open a new door for him. He didn't know how many Taos he had, and whether he could transform into all of them. This reminded Han Fei of when he was on the Scattered Stars Island in the Yin-Yang Heaven. He heard that the Sea King transformed into a Tao and blessed billions of creatures in the sea with his body as a Tao. But now it seemed that it was **T. Maybe that was what was written in the book. But how many creatures could he bless? That was obviously a problem, because transforming into a Tao could only transform into a Tao that he owned, and he couldn't transform into any Tao. The so-called Tao of incarnation was actually a kind of Tao in the state of his own consciousness. For example, the Yin-Yang Tao and the supreme Yin-Yang Wheel were equivalent to a form of Tao transformation. For example, the invincible path and the invincible golden body were equivalent to a form of Tao transformation. Of course, if he wanted to completely transform into Tao, Han Fei needed to transform himself into a Tao. At this time, Han Fei seemed to understand that transforming into a Tao didn't mean that he would die. He could still transform back after that. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to test it at this moment. Anyway, he got another low-quality divine weapon. This was already the second one, and he received an additional Tao. If it weren't for the fact that the water essence of the infinity water didn't seem to be enough, the infinity water might also be promoted to a low-quality divine weapon. What a pity. Phew. When Han Fei opened his eyes and smiled, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that Han Fei had taken this one. At this time, they would rather Han Fei took the inheritance of this Tao. Otherwise, it would be too horrible. It would be a massacre. Even if he could resist for 1 or 2 seconds, he couldn't resist for 10 or 8 seconds. Look at Ji Xian, one of the top 10 on the sea expansion list in the chaotic ocean. Even if it was just a little bit off, it wasn't much. In front of that small knife, it was nothing. It could cut him to death just like that. The luckiest one was Hongyu. He had exchanged 500 million resources for his life. If Han Fei hadn't performed the heavenly awakening divine technique on him, he would have been the first to die. However, no one dared to relax because this was only the third Tao. The Venerable Emperor was going to impart 5 Tao in a row, but the third Tao was already so dangerous. How dangerous would the next 2 be? After Han Fei obtained this Tao, no one dared to relax for a moment. They still fused with their spiritual beasts and even activated their secret methods. After only a dozen seconds, all of a sudden, everyone felt their bodies go limp. It was as if infinite gravity had been imposed on their bodies. Even Han Fei felt that his body was tense, as if the sky had collapsed. This time, the three people from the behemoth bloodline had just returned to the form of a giant beast. The toad had just returned to its giant beast form. Although it wasn't in its complete form, it was still big enough. However, the toad fell directly to the ground, bleeding all over, and his flesh was falling apart. At that moment, he chose to return to his human form. But even so, when he recovered, he had turned into a bloody mess. Fortunately, kings had the power of regeneration. As long as he was not dead, it was very easy for him to recover. Learning from the toad, the one-horned female flood dragon and the cuttlefish girl also turned into human forms. Only then did everyone see that above their heads, a huge palm, which almost covered the entire space, was slapping down. Therefore, everyone only felt that the pressure on their bodies was increasing crazily. Huang Jie cursed. Are you going to kill us? Are you not going to let go of those who have already inherited the Tao? However, Liang Yin suddenly said, No, that knife didn't hit me just now. Among all of you, I'm the only one who didn't get hit. The young man from the Martial Emperor City also said, Although the heavenly demonic sound is strong, it doesn't seem to have a deep impact on my soul. It's not exaggerated to the point where I'm going crazy. When everyone heard this, they immediately understood. So, those who had received the inheritance could actually avoid the other Tao inheritances? Didn't this mean that the next two Tao, which were more difficult, had to be inherited by those who hadn't received the Tao inheritances? Chapter 2015. The sky-covering hand was slowly descending, but the toad shouted, The power of this hand is too great. I fell to the ground with a bang just now, and my flesh has been smashed into pieces. The one-horned female flood dragon said, Let me have a try. The female flood dragon flew up and waved her tail. She turned into a shadow of a flood dragon in the air, and a sharp metal aura burst out. Her giant tail soared up to the sky. BM, there were two consecutive collisions. The first one was from the tail of the one-horned female flood dragon, and the second one was from the explosion of her giant tail. Pooh! The one-horned female flood dragon spat out a mouthful of blood, but her power had slightly shaken the sky-covering giant hand. Everyone saw the giant hand pause for a moment. Although the time was very short, not even half a second, at least the power of the giant hand was not unshakable. While everyone was surprised by the power of the giant hand, Han Fei frowned slightly. The female flood dragon didn't seem to use her real strength. Could it be that she didn't want this path? At this time, everyone already knew that the so-called crisis was actually the inheritance of the Great Path. They just didn't know about the Thunder Test, or rather, they didn't understand it and were very passive. Later, they really couldn't subdue the heavenly demonic sound and the ultimate blade. But this time they could see it. It was more like a struggle of power. This was the fourth path. If they could get the inheritance of the Great Path, wouldn't their strength be doubled? So at this time, someone had an idea. The one-horned female flood dragon was defeated. Pang Jia, the 100 demons, transformed into an old turtle. His turtle shell flashed with red light and soared to the sky. Dong, in terms of defense, Pang Jia had just blocked thousands of attacks from the ultimate blade, which was enough to prove his strength. Pang Jia's strength was completely different from that of the one-horned female flood dragon. He seemed to have resisted the giant hand. But good things didn't last. Pang Jia only managed to hold on for 5 breaths of time. With a cracking sound, a crack suddenly appeared on his tortoise shell. Immediately, Pang Jia became dispirited and fell. Unlike normal kings, the tortoise's tortoise shell was affected by the heaven and earth array. Recovering it was not easy. Pang Jia didn't have the support of Han Fei's apocalyptic divine technique, so when he found that he couldn't resist it, he immediately retreated. At the very least, he could preserve his strength and give himself some time to recover. If there was really no one here who could stop him, he would still end up in his hands in the end. At this moment, Li Jian of the Merfolk royal family suddenly met the attack. Compared to Pang Jia, Li Dian's attack was much more ferocious. Li Jian held the harpoon in his hand and was surrounded by waves of water. He faced the heavenly palm with one hand, and it seemed that he wanted to compete in strength. Boom! There was another loud bang. Li Jian was on par with Pang Jia, and he actually single-handedly blocked this sky-covering hand. Roar! 10,000 tides, the great tides of the vast sea. At that moment, it was as if layers upon layers of waves surged into the sky, spanning more than 300 miles, one wave after another, surging violently. In fact, in terms of strength, no one here was stronger than Han Fei. However, if this hand represented strength, no one here could resist it except Han Fei, right? If the power of thunder was the great Tao of Emperor's first reincarnation, then according to the order, this great Tao of strength should be the great Tao of Emperor's fourth reincarnation, and it was very likely to be the third strongest great Tao of him, even stronger than the great Tao of speed that Han Fei had obtained. If it was really so strong, Li Jian couldn't resist it. Sure enough, Han Fei's guess was confirmed. Although Li Jian seemed to be strong, he only persisted for 2 minutes longer than Pang Jia duo. After 2 minutes, Pang Jia's arm was deformed and finally exploded. At this time, everyone turned their eyes to Han Fei. Bai Yu said, Han Fei, why don't you try to have 2 great Daos at the same time? The martial emperor's city knew Han Fei very well. According to their intelligence, Han Fei's body refining level was even stronger than that of the Grand Essence stage, and his explosive power was even stronger. Bai Yu didn't have the ability to resist this sky-covering hand, so he naturally counted on Han Fei. Seeing that the sky-covering hand was getting lower and lower, the pressure on Ultimate King was getting heavier and heavier. If he was completely suppressed by this hand, apart from the 3 of them who had obtained the inheritance, everyone else would die. Even if they obtained the inheritance, they might not die. If that was the case, did it mean that no one had come here in the past 10,000 years, and no one had obtained the inheritance? Old Huang Jie smiled gently. It seems that in the end, we all have to rely on you. Su Yin couldn't help laughing at himself. You are indeed worthy of the title of King of Humanity. I didn't expect that in the end, you will bear all the responsibility. Hearing this, everyone remembered that Han Fei considered himself to be the king of humanity. Su Yin, Liang Yin, and Han Yu all found that Han Fei was actually quite easy to talk to. As long as he admitted defeat, it would not be a big deal. Han Fei didn't want to argue with him. What he was afraid of was those who refused to admit defeat and insisted on fighting. For example, Tai Ching Wuji had repeatedly attacked the Yin-Yang Heaven and tried all kinds of means to kill Han Fei. How could they not kill him? Therefore, as soon as Zhou Fu and Ji Xin appeared, Han Fei directly exploded and killed them. 2 overlords who were at least in the top 20 of the chaotic ocean had died, just like that. Wasn't it just a gift? As for Han Fei himself, he actually wanted this great path. Fortuitous encounters and treasures couldn't be obtained by others because their abilities were limited, so it was impossible for them to obtain fortuitous encounters. Although it was good to pick them up by luck, most of the time, both luck and strength had to be taken into account. Otherwise, these fortuitous encounters wouldn't be fortuitous encounters, but a path to disaster. Therefore, Han Fei summoned the infinity water to protect himself. Then, the great path was activated. With a low roar, the Dharma idol appeared. Everyone saw a giant rising, and Han Fei was standing on the head of the Dharma idol. At this moment, Han Fei and the Dharma idol both did the same action, blocking the sky-covering hand with both hands. 2 muffled sounds rang out consecutively, and the sky-covering hand stopped. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 10 breaths, 20 breaths. Just when everyone thought that Han Fei would be able to withstand this attack, they heard a crack and saw some cracks appear on the Dharma image. Then, the king saw the center of Han Fei's eyebrows split open. The invincible eye opened, and his body was wrapped in a layer of golden light. At this point, Han Fei's power had exceeded 1 million waves. Boom, crack, the earth was cracking, and the Dharma idol seemed to be pressed into the ground by that terrible power. The battle of strength between the 2 sides made the kings tremble. On the martial emperor city's side, when Bai Yu saw the Dharma idol, he felt that Han Fei's Dharma idol seemed to be more powerful. He guessed that the firmament Dharma idol performed by different people was different. At this moment, Han Fei felt that he didn't get any Tao of strength, but he felt that the Tao of strength seemed to be able to integrate with the Tao of gravity. As it happened, he knew both of these Taos. Therefore, Han Fei used the Tao of gravity to reverse gravity, but it was still a little difficult. This could only mean that the Fourth Imperial Emperor's understanding of the Tao of gravity was stronger than his. However, Han Fei didn't gain nothing. For a long time, he hadn't been able to really integrate with the Dharma idol. However, under the power of the sky-covering giant hand, his physical body was merging with the Dharma world. Or rather, his body was being squeezed into the inside of the Dharma idol. Logically speaking, the Dharma idol was his enlarged body. But Han Fei and the Dharma idol were separated. Maybe it was because he had cultivated the firmament Dharma idol in advance. But in any case, now Han Fei felt that he was merging with the Dharma idol bit by bit. With the Dharma idol as one, his strength would definitely be further improved. So Han Fei wasn't in a hurry. He even felt that his strength was still a little bit lacking. Then, Han Fei swallowed another 5th-level Tao pattern pill. However, it was a pity that the 5th-level Tao pattern pill could no longer provide him with several times the strength. It could only barely increase Han Fei's temporary strength by about 80,000 waves. But at this time, every bit of strength was good. Han Fei's body was gradually squeezed into the Dharma idol. Below, old man Huang Jie couldn't help but be amazed. He is also a king. Everyone knew what Huang Jie meant. They all exclaimed in their hearts. Yes, Han Fei was just a king now. If Han Fei could open the sky, how strong would he be? Were he Dao Yuan and Bei Luochen so strong before they opened the sky? Don't be ridiculous. They all became kings together at the beginning. Although the masters of the Immortal Palace didn't say it, didn't they know who was stronger and who was weaker? With Han Fei's current strength, no one in the Pioneer Sea realm could rival him. The Giant Beast clan. The Toad Giant Beast sighed. I didn't expect him to be so strong. If I had known, I would have joined hands with him. The one-horned female flood dragon asked, What do you mean? I won't tell you. Pang Jia and Zhou Bai looked awful. The stronger Han Fei was, the more danger they would be in. But at this moment, they didn't dare to disturb Han Fei, because if Han Fei didn't collapse, they would also be finished. They could only hope that Han Fei would be seriously injured or find a way to run away. About half an hour later, Han Fei had completely merged into the Dharma idol body. As soon as Han Fei entered the Dharma idol body, his body naturally fell between the two ribs on the chest of this Dharma idol body. It was a kind of harmonious feeling. It was a combination of power. Han Fei felt that his strength seemed to have skyrocketed by 30%. He didn't know whether it was the power of the Dharma idol, his own power, or the power of the combination of the two. However, the sacrificing punch suddenly erupted. Dong, the terrifying power, shook the heads of the kings and made them buzz. They were directly hit by the strongest impact, and many people vomited blood. However, when they looked up at the sky again, the sky-covering palm was gone. Only a huge Dharma idol was left, shrouded in invincible will, shining with golden light, like a giant god. Chapter 2016. Of the 5 inheritances, Han Fei had already taken 2. Everyone's hearts shook. They wanted the next inheritance to be theirs, but they also hoped that Han Fei would be able to take the next inheritance. Of course, the people of the seabed and the 100 demons didn't want Han Fei to take the last inheritance. Not to mention that after Han Fei obtained the inheritance, their safety would not be guaranteed. Han Fei had obtained the inheritances of the venerable Emperor one after another. If this continued, who could stop Han Fei? Just look at the powerhouses of Taiqing Palace and Wuji Heaven who were against Han Fei. They killed without hesitation and without hesitation. Would they be afraid of the 100 Demon Clan and the Seabed Human Clan at all if they were afraid of the Human Clan? Zhou Bai and Pang Jia exchanged glances. Both of them knew that no matter what, they had to either attack or find a way to escape. There was no third option. What everyone didn't know was that Han Fei didn't actually inherit the Tao of Power, because Han Fei felt that he could block the so-called Tao of Power. It was only because he had not reached the limits of the sea-opening realm. Perhaps in terms of strength, he was not inferior to the fourth reincarnation of the venerable sovereign. Therefore, the path of strength this time was only to help him completely merge with Dharma World. From now on, if he used Dharma World to fight, his strength would increase by 30%. However, Dizun's fourth reincarnation had chosen the path of strength, which meant that he had chosen the path of body refining. Moreover, judging from the power just now, Dizun's fourth reincarnation was comparable to him in terms of power. It was hard to say if he would be stronger than him at the peak of sea opening, but at least he would be stronger than his current self. Therefore, two questions arose in Han Fei's mind. First of all, even with this kind of body-refining strength, he still couldn't prove his Tao in the end. So why would he need to go on a fifth reincarnation? Secondly, after experiencing the three great ways, the venerable emperor chose the school of body refining, which meant that he must have pondered it over and over again. If he didn't have absolute confidence at the beginning of his cultivation, how could he choose this path? If nothing unexpected happened, then the time consumed by the school of body refinement would absolutely be much longer than the time taken by the other Grand Daos. These two questions made Han Fei wonder if body tempering alone was not enough to achieve immortality. As the saying goes, we must stand on the shoulders of giants. If our predecessors have any proof, we should use it as proof and research. He had to find a way to know the pros and cons of the body refining school. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder what would happen if this road was abandoned. So what kind of way did the fifth incarnation of Venerable Sovereign walk? After all, this Venerable Sovereign had attained immortality in his sixth life. He must have comprehended the true meaning of immortality in his fifth life. Han Fei vaguely felt that this was the real meaning of the existence of the Imperial Palace. The more dangerous the place, the greater the opportunity. His trip to the depths of the eternal lightning prison was not in vain. Just as Han Fei was waiting for the fifth path to appear, the space began to tremble slightly. The five graves were approaching each other, and slowly, the five graves merged into one, turning into a strange scene of one grave and one tablet. Bang! Just as everyone was on guard against the fifth road, they suddenly saw a protrusion on the grave. Holy sh**t! Even Han Fei was shocked. The toad exclaimed, "No way. Was it not enough to leave behind a few great Daos? Now you still want to keep one alive?" The cuttlefish girl said, "It can't be alive. Only the sixth incarnation can be a venerable sovereign. How can it still be alive?" The one-horned female flood dragon said, "The Imperial Palace has appeared here and wants to keep everything. I'm afraid that even the venerable sovereign himself may have died." Han Fei said, "Then it must be a corpse that has come back to life. Han Yu, your mad corpse heaven is good at controlling corpses. Is it easy to defeat a corpse of this level?" Han Yu shook his head like a rattle and said, "This must be the ultimate Tao of the venerable sovereign. If this corpse comes back to life, I'm afraid no one here can suppress it." Bai Yu asked, "It's just a corpse that has opened the sky. No one can suppress it?" Han Yu said, "It's not as simple as opening the sky. This is a corpse that is most likely to lead to the venerable sovereign. Besides, only my mad corpse heaven knows how terrifying corpse puppets are. A real corpse is invincible, let alone this one." Huang Jie said, "Don't panic. My god-killing demon poison can melt everything. Maybe we can try it." They saw that the soil on the grave seemed to be pushed up by something. It was like a human hand, and the kings were all shocked. They just hoped that the situation where many kings were wiped out at once wouldn't happen. Because at this time, the few people who were still alive, except for Han Fei and the underwater humans and the 100 demons, had almost no hostile relationship, so everyone should live in peace. Puff! Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. With a puff, they saw something as thick as an arm sticking out of the grave. Then the kings all breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not an arm. A bronze-colored tree branch stretched out from the grave. Why was it a tree branch? Naturally, it was because there were 2 tender bronze leaves hanging on it. However, in everyone's eyes, this bronze branch was growing vigorously. In less than 2 seconds, it had grown 4 or 5 times in size. 3 seconds later, It was nearly 2 meters tall. 10 seconds later, it reached a height of more than 20 meters, and everyone saw various strange lines begin to appear on the trunk. When the number was bigger, Baiyu shouted in a low voice, "Tao pattern?" Han Fei and Baiyu recognized it almost at the same time. The existence of the Tao pattern let Han Fei know that this thing was definitely of a high level. After 100 breaths, this place was already more than 500 meters tall. With a pung sound, a green curtain of light swept out from a tree. The kings instinctively retreated, but the surroundings were sealed off by the electric ring, so they couldn't retreat. When everyone was swept by the green light, they saw that their surroundings had directly changed. At this time, it was no longer a grave in front of everyone, but a huge bronze divine tree. And where they were, they seemed to be above the starry sky. In the distance, stars were twinkling. The kings looked up and saw that the bronze tree was covered with strange lights. Han Fei felt that the origin sea moved, or, to be exact, the demon purification pot moved. Little vine. Han Fei was shocked. Is this luck? Is there a little vine here? However, before Han Fei thought too much, he heard the snow girl say, "Perception works." Han Fei was also taken aback. He scanned hundreds of thousands of kilometers with his perception, and each of the dazzling treasures looked extremely extraordinary. Ring, ring, ring. The crowd turned to look at the source of the sound, and they saw a bronze bell emitting a crisp sound. But in fact, the bell was even bigger than the Toad King in its complete state. Near the blue bell, there was a bright red flame burning on the branch, which was also huge. Judging from the weird flame, it was obviously a rare fire of heaven and earth. Above it, Han Fei also saw a familiar item, which was the crystal ball that contained the yin-yang sky and the waterwood sky, which was also a small world. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. "A branch hanging a world?" Su Lian exclaimed. "What's that? Stars? 9 stars are hanging on the tree?" Everyone followed Su Lian's direction and continued to look up, and then they all gasped. As a king, he must have studied the appearance of the big stars. If they weren't stars, what could they be? But they were a little small, and each seemed to have a radius of less than 1,000 kilometers. On the tree, Han Fei saw fishing rods, gems, swaying whips, shiny battle suits, and an ancient divine boat. And these were not the most important, because at the top of this bronze tree, there was a futon. There was a jade slip and a small vine on the futon. Seeing this, Han Fei was excited. Sure enough, the more dangerous the place was, the more opportunities there were. In this way, this was the 6th small vine of the demon purification pot. In the chaotic azure sea, this was already the 3rd small vine he had obtained. Han Fei didn't understand why the little vines were separated. Why were the vines scattered everywhere? And this time, he might be able to find the answer from the imperial palace. Similarly, more than one person saw the jade slip and the small vine. Hong Yu looked at Han Fei and thought, why is this small vine so similar to the small vine that old Lady Chiu used to refine pills? And that small vine should be in Han Fei's hands now, right? Han Fei noticed Hong Yu's gaze, and his eyes turned cold. Hong Yu immediately said, I don't know anything. I won't fight for that small vine. Only then did Han Fei slowly retract his gaze. In fact, many others were secretly spying on Han Fei. Now, the strongest here should be Han Fei, Baiyu, and Pang Jia. Zhou Bai and Li Dian were powerful, but it was impossible for them to defeat Han Fei in close combat. With Pang Jia's powerful defense, he might be able to fight, but if they fought, his chances of winning were not high. Only Baiyu, who was in charge of the Martial Emperor City's super resource store, could be said to have many treasures. But Baiyu said that he could only maintain about 30 seconds in the heaven opening state. If this was true, even with all kinds of treasures, Baiyu might not be Han Fei's match. But if Baiyu held back, or if he had some special treasures, he could indeed fight with Han Fei. As for the giant beasts, Han Fei was sure that they had hidden their strength, but it was hard to say how much. But if they said that they could beat him, Han Fei did not believe it. Just as everyone was searching for treasures on the tree, Snow Girl said, Don't forget our battle. Did you forget how big that tree was when we first saw it? Did you forget how dangerous it was? Chapter 2017. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the Snow Lady, Su Shulian, and the others. Han Fei naturally didn't know what had happened in the past. The Snow Lady said, "Back then we found the tree inside the Bronze Gate. That tree is almost the same size as this one. Even so, we ran into the spirit of the divine tree when we fought for it. In that battle alone, the number of monarchs who perished from the various major forces numbered over 100. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Was it the incident where more than 100 humans went there, but only 36 returned in the end and eventually established the 36 Black Heavens? So, that was the cause of the 36 mysterious heavens. Huang Jie said, "But it's slightly different. There were many great Daos on our tree, but there doesn't seem to be any great Daos on this one." Han Fei was confused. "You can see great Daos too?" Huang Jie explained, "After eating the fruit of Dao, different great Daos can be awakened depending on one's luck or fate, or they can deepen their understanding of their own great Daos and extend them." Hong Yu added, "When we fought for the treasures on that tree, we ran into the illusion of an extraterrestrial demon. I'm afraid it's the same this time." Seeing that Han Fei was confused, Hong Yu said again, "When you pick the treasures, you'll fall into an illusion or a place where you don't know if it's an illusion or not. Anyway, as many as 100 kings died that time." Han Fei thought to himself, "No matter how dangerous it is, I have to do it." Observing the situation of the others, it seemed to be the same. The opportunity was right in front of them. They only had two choices: fight for it or die. The Snow Lady said, "Don't be greedy. Find a most suitable one. That's the best." Liang Yin said, "I'm just a bit confused. Why hasn't the fifth great Tao appeared yet?" Not just Liang Yin, everybody had the same question. However, in front of the bronze tree and the treasures on it, everybody automatically suppressed the question. Han Fei couldn't help but glance at Pang Jia and Zhou Bai. He decided not to waste his energy on them for now. After he got the vine, he might have a chance to hunt them in the future. However, Pang Jia and Zhou Bai had goosebumps under Han Fei's stare. They wondered if Han Fei was trying to kill them before he searched for the treasures. As such, the two of them shot out with a whoosh and were already flying toward the bronze tree. Zhou Bai's target was a demonic essence bead that shone with a red light. Although Han Fei didn't know what it was, he knew that if Zhou Bai absorbed it, his strength would definitely increase greatly. But Han Fei didn't stop him. Not to mention whether Zhou Bai could get it. Even if he did, so what? Would he be his opponent if he captured him? However, as soon as Zhou Bai stepped within 100 miles of the demon essence bullet, a blue ball of light appeared and enveloped him. It was as if there was a huge blue fruit growing on the bronze tree branch. The kings looked at each other, only to hear Huang Jie say, "It should be similar to the last time. Let's go treasure hunting." Then, Huang Jie looked at Han Fei. "Now it's up to fate. Not many kings came here, so those who can make it out alive are no exception. If we die, it will only be due to our lack of luck and strength." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Have a safe journey." Huang Jie and the others went in different directions. The Snow Lady found an invisible ice crystal. Huang Jie found a rainbow spirit worm. Liang Yin found a purple bamboo on a tree. Hong Yu found a skeleton. However, no one fought for the jade slip and the small vine at the top of the tree. On the other side, Bai Yu's perception had collided with Han Fei's several times on the top of the tree. He probably knew Han Fei's target. Now, only he and Han Fei hadn't made a move yet. The two looked at each other, and Bai Yu said, "Although these are all rare treasures in the world, maybe each of them can help people open the sky. But the Martial Emperor City has never lacked treasures. But can that small vine grow a 9th grade divine pill?" Han Fei grinned. "What, you want to snatch it?" Bai Yu shook his head slightly. "It may be good stuff, but it's at the top. I haven't reached the level of opening the sky yet, so I don't want to die yet. I'm just reminding you that the 5th path hasn't appeared yet." Then Bai Yu shook his head. His target was the 6th treasure below the top, a book. When everyone had their targets, Han Fei didn't go up immediately. Instead, he took out his fishing rod and caught a soul-calming pill for himself. Then he cast the fishing rod in the river of time for a while. Although he didn't catch anything, Han Fei nodded slightly and flew to the top of the bronze tree. Just like the others, when Han Fei was within 100 kilometers of this place, he was surrounded by a blue light ball. The next moment, Han Fei appeared in the starry sky, further away. Yes, far away, there were vast stars, and the nearest ones were several large stars. He scanned with his perception and found that the scene of desolation around the large stars was extremely real. And above the void, it was very cold, and he couldn't breathe. He could only absorb the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. This made Han Fei suspicious. Am I really in the starry sky? That was still acceptable. However, she saw a young man dressed in black with a smile on his face, tens of thousands of kilometers away, looking at her with a smile on his face. Han Fei couldn't help narrowing his eyes. Alive or dead? Originally, Han Fei didn't expect the person opposite him to answer. After all, the imperial palace had existed for tens of thousands of years. It was a bit exaggerated to tell him that there were still people alive here, except for the venerable emperor. However, things were often unexpected. The person said, "It's been millions of years, and you are the 13th person to come here. I wonder what you can do." Although Han Fei was surprised, he immediately responded, "The 13th? Do the previous 12 people all pass the inheritance of several paths?" However, the person opposite him said leisurely, "Maybe the way you came is different. Since you came here from there, you can feel the power of the fifth path." Huh? Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. The fifth path? Is it passed on from person to person? Didn't Huang Jie say it was a heavenly demon illusion? Or am I in an extremely real illusion? Before Han Fei realized what was going on, the man on the opposite side suddenly appeared in front of Han Fei and slapped him in the face. So fast, Han Fei suddenly realized that this person walked the path of extreme speed, which was the same as the ultimate blade he collected. The two walked the same path. A blue halo appeared in front of Han Fei, and with the help of the power of time, he launched a sacrificing punch backhandedly. But this time, the power of time failed to stop this person. The hand broke through the barrier of time as if it was as simple as breaking a water mirror, and slapped Han Fei hundreds of miles away with one palm. However, the moment the sacrificing punch burst out, it was directly shattered by a very powerful force. It caused violent shock ripples that spread out layer by layer. Body refining? Han Fei frowned slightly. This person's physique was extremely strong, even stronger than mine. Such a strong physique, such a fast speed. The other party must have walked many paths at the same time. After the first confrontation, Han Fei's heart shook, and the ultimate blade left his body, turned into the extreme speed, and rushed at the mysterious man. The ignorant are fearless. The mysterious man in black grabbed the ultimate blade with one hand, and Han Fei immediately felt the mutual attraction of the same path. At that moment, Han Fei felt as if he was about to lose the ultimate blade. This made him suddenly think of a terrible thing. The same path harvested each other, also known as harvesting leaks. This was what the old turtle said before. The same path was a process in which the strong harvested the weak. With this thought in mind, Han Fei immediately forcibly withdrew the ultimate blade, but the ultimate blade had already been entangled by the other party. Han Fei thought to himself, "I spent countless resources and vitality to get the ultimate blade, so I can't let it be swallowed like this." Therefore, Han Fei leaped with golden light. The great Tao convergence sword erupted, forcibly snatching the ultimate blade. Huh? The man in black seemed a little surprised, probably not expecting Han Fei's speed to be so fast. And Han Fei's speed was not the same as his, so he couldn't swallow Han Fei. However, when Han Fei withdrew the ultimate blade, he heard the heavenly, demonic sound coming. Layers of void ripples were resisting the great Tao convergence sword, and the purple lightning was like a pillar, striking at the great Tao convergence sword. Even so, it took the man 2 minutes to block the great Tao convergence sword. At this time, if Han Fei still didn't realize what was going on, he would be a fool. He said, "You've cultivated all the great Taos you've cultivated before at the same time in your fifth life." The man in black smiled slightly. "Yes, Han Fei was surprised. So, cultivating multiple great Daos at the same time was a way to become an emperor? But if it was so simple, wouldn't people in the heaven-opening stage start to cultivate multiple great Daos at the same time? How could there be so many people who couldn't achieve immortality at all? Therefore, cultivating multiple great Daos at the same time was definitely not the only way to become an emperor. At least, if the man in front of him was in his fifth life, then he also failed to achieve immortality in this life. He just took more great Daos. In a heavenly demonic sound, Han Fei said, "I've already experienced these great Daos of yours. Is there anything new? If not, it's my turn now." At that moment, a golden light burst out of this man's body. The next moment, he leaped and appeared dozens of kilometers away from Han Fei. Han Fei's pupils constricted. Golden light leap? I've only used it once, but he's already learned it? Chapter 2018. Of course, Han Fei was stunned. If this person's learning ability was so strong that he could learn the golden light leap after seeing it once, how could he fight him? The black-clothed man charged at him again. There was wind and thunder in his fist, and the sound of wind and thunder was deafening. When he punched out, many kinds of great Daos merged. Han Fei activated his great Daos, but he was still blasted back more than 500 kilometers. When Han Fei flew out, he saw the man appear dozens of kilometers away from him again with a golden light leap. He pointed at Han Fei with 2 fingers and burst out Han Fei's original technique, the Great Tao Convergence Sword. F***CK. Han Fei was dumbfounded. It's fine if you learn my golden light leap. After all, your speed is really fast. But you learn my Great Tao Convergence Sword? That's too much. Facing the black-clothed man's Great Tao Convergence Sword, Han Fei also pointed with 2 fingers, and at the same time, the Great Tao Convergence Sword burst out. The 2 Great Tao Convergence Swords collided. It was not until this moment that Han Fei discovered that although they both performed the Great Tao Convergence Sword, the Great Daos contained in it were different. This made Han Fei breathe a sigh of relief. In other words, although the man opposite him could imitate the moves, he couldn't imitate the Great Tao. He was only using his own great path to unleash this attack. But even so, it was enough to shock Han Fei. Han Fei couldn't help but think of something. With a golden light leap, he tried to cross hundreds of thousands of kilometers directly. The black-clothed man also leaped with a golden light leap. However, the other party appeared a little too late. Han Fei smiled slightly. It turns out that you have just been running, not leaping. The black-clothed man didn't feel disappointed because Han Fei saw through him. He said, "Interesting, you and I are walking the same type of path." Han Fei scoffed. "Don't talk nonsense. I'm different from you. At most, I dabble in a lot of things." The black-clothed man looked at Han Fei with a smile. "Do you have any other great techniques?" Han Fei didn't respond but asked, "Are you dead or alive?" The black-clothed man didn't hide it. He said, "I'm just a mark. When the energy of a mark is exhausted or I disintegrate on my own, that's when I dissipate. It's a pity that until now, there hasn't been anyone who can exhaust my energy." The man in black smiled faintly. "Me, I've had enough fun. Next, I'm going to make my move." Han Fei's pupils constricted. "You haven't really taken action yet?" The 2 of them looked at each other, and almost at the same time, Han Fei leaped out with a golden light. The man in black didn't use the golden light leap again, but rushed at him at extreme speed. The 2 of them didn't use the Great Tao Convergence Sword anymore. Instead, they used their fists to attack each other. Boom, 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 dong, dong, dong. In just a few seconds, Han Fei seemed to have been fighting for 30 or 50 seconds. The power of each of the 2 was almost equivalent to a sacrificing punch. The 2 of them fought from the void to the planet. In the end, they only saw the planet crumble and the world collapse. In just the 5th breath, a blue halo circulated in front of Han Fei. The power of the Great Path was about to run out. He had to reverse time and return his peak state. But when Han Fei reversed time, he saw that the man in black rushed into time and tried to reverse time with him. Get lost. At that moment, Han Fei summoned the immortal spiritual energy and the ferocious qi in the origin sea and activated the divine baleful qi and the crafty time technique in an instant. BM, the outbreak of the divine baleful qi finally made the expression of the man in black change. However, this person didn't seem to panic too much. Obviously, he knew these two powers. Therefore, in the face of the divine baleful qi, the man in black burst out mysterious yellow qi, turned it into a sword, and blocked the divine baleful qi. However, under the effect of the crafty time technique, the divine baleful qi actually broke out twice. So even a man in black couldn't help but take the divine baleful qi head on. But because of his physique and speed, the divine baleful qi didn't seriously injure him, but only destroyed most of his body. When the powers intertwined, Han Fei returned to his peak state, and the man in black almost recovered. In this confrontation, Han Fei won by a narrow margin. But the man in black obviously changed his fighting style immediately. This time, Han Fei felt the boundless wind around him, and there was water mist in the wind, which was piercingly cold. In the ruins of the stars, countless Taoist patterns and arrays were fusing, and Han Fei seemed to be in a storm. Han Fei's face changed drastically. This man's power of the Great Path had changed again, which was so different from the battle just now that Han Fei couldn't react for a while. Swish, in the ruins of the stars, a beam of light flashed, but it was a sword mark, and the Great Path unification sword stabbed straight at Han Fei. Han Fei condensed infinity water on his fingertips, turned it into a knife, and barely blocked it. Then, Han Fei found that the bloodline in his body showed two opposite forms, and his spiritual energy instantly went out of control. Han Fei's body exploded, but the Gemini divine technique was activated simultaneously, turning into two mists, one black and one white. Then, not to be outdone, Han Fei activated the supreme yin-yang wheel, and the yin-yang pattern rotated above the man's head, trying to crush the young man in black. The latter grinned and said, "The Great Path of yin-yang? It's a pity that you haven't understood life and death yet." The man in black also turned into two figures, one black and one white, which fused like an awl and pierced the supreme yin-yang pattern. Puff, after a round of battle, Han Fei retreated quickly, bleeding from his eyes, nose, and mouth. With a thought, the Tianqi divine technique descended and was quickly repairing himself. "You also know the Great Path of yin-yang?" The man in black smiled and said, "Since you found that I cultivate many great paths at the same time, it shouldn't be difficult for you to guess." Han Fei was shocked. Yes, all the great paths of the 36 Xiantian realms were spread out in this imperial palace, right? The great paths that you treasure may have been used by others a million years ago. The degree of mastery may be even higher than yours. Han Fei found that perhaps only the Tianqi divine technique, the road of invincibility, and the great path of time could not be mastered by the man in black. Not only that, Han Fei was not in a hurry to reverse time, because he almost collapsed in time just now. Han Fei couldn't help but throw out a fishing hook and break through time. The man in black tried to stop him, but Han Fei punched out and the void lines crazily extended out. Although the black-clothed man was blocked, to Han Fei's surprise, the black-clothed man was able to catch a void line from the void. However, the man in black didn't attack the void lines, or he didn't know how to break Han Fei's void line. The man in black said, "Interesting. In terms of great paths and means, you're not bad. Unfortunately, if you want to achieve immortality, it's far from enough." At this time, Han Fei fished out the Empyrean ancient sword from the void. This sword appeared, one to attack the man in black, and the other to protect him and let him reverse time. Sure enough, when Han Fei reversed time again, the man in black burst out three sword auras at the same time, which looked very much like the Grand Pure 1-meter sword of the Grand Pure Palace. The three swords slashed at the Empyrean ancient sword. But in the end, it still gave Han Fei another chance to reverse time. After returning to his peak state again, Han Fei happened to see the scene of the Empyrean ancient sword exploding. Han Fei was shocked. Is it really so fierce? Although it was fished out, it was broken in the blink of an eye. Han Fei immediately retreated and continued to fish with his fishing rod. To Han Fei's surprise, the man in black didn't stop Han Fei from fishing, but was curious to see what else Han Fei could catch. Once, twice, thrice, after fishing 5 times in a row, just when Han Fei was embarrassed and felt that the other party was going easy on him, Han Fei finally fished out a golden arm on the 6th time. The golden arm, caught by the time fishing technique, was completely obedient to Han Fei's command. Han Fei didn't let it parasitize him at first, but only let it attack the enemy. Han Fei thought that this should be enough to give this man in black a headache, right? However, the man in black said, "You actually found my arm back?" Han Fei was surprised. Han Fei was dumbfounded. So it turned out that he had fished the man's arm back? But then Han Fei thought, if this golden arm belongs to this man, how strong is he? Could it be that he had already reached the peak of the heaven-opening stage? So with just one arm, he can defeat anyone in the sea-opening realm. Therefore, the man in black in front of him was indeed just a mark. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to survive until now. But since Han Fei couldn't defeat this man with his own strength, it would be a good idea to use his arm. And it would be a good idea to use his hands. Han Fei used the Gemini divine technique again. This time, the white mist body directly pressed on this golden arm. Suddenly, Han Fei felt that the white mist body was about to explode, and a terrifying force swept through his whole body, directly reaching the upper limit of the power that his white mist body could bear. Han Fei thought that even if he operated the Great Tao, opened the invincible eye, and performed the dragon transformation technique, he wouldn't be as strong as he was now. Seeing this, the man in black on the opposite side couldn't help but fall silent. Interesting. I have to say that you are the strongest of these 13 people. You have seen the Tao of the 5th life. This opportunity is yours. Han Fei was ready to fight and used all his trump cards. Unexpectedly, the man in black on the opposite side gave up and didn't want to fight anymore, and his figure gradually dissipated, becoming more and more blurred. Han Fei said, "Hey, what's your name?" The man in black smiled faintly. "My name is not important. My name in the 6th life is Chu Hao." Han Fei was not surprised that the man in black dissipated. After all, how could a mark fight the real body? This golden arm could be preserved to this day only because it hadn't parasitized a strong master. He thought it was a battle of life and death, but it ended in this strange atmosphere. But where Han Fei was, he was still in the starry sky. When Han Fei looked again, he keenly discovered something. In the depths of the void, there was a futon floating. Uncontrollably, the demon purification pot flew out on its own. The return of the 6th small vine quietly began in this starry sky.